Stream is live. Welcome to Wolfpack.
Hello.
Hey.
Remote edition again today.
Also, are any of you guys running the show at the Mercury later? Because I probably will go to that.
Yeah, one of us is.
Just Connor.
It's me. I'm running the show at the Mercury.
I'm going to go.
Cool. I'll see you there.
Connor, when you said one of us will be, you were referring to one of the personalities that is contained within you, right?
That's right.
I bet it would. I imagine it would be several of you.
It usually is a group effort.
In a whole night, it can't just be one.
That's right.
A group
I'm only working
effort.
one door tonight, so it's only one doorman. When I had two doors that I was working in a night, then it was interesting because people would see two different doormen.
This is a TikTok contagion.
Oh?
Yeah, you get multiple personalities from TikTok these days.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So
then-
when are we going to
what do
see
you mean?
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. TikTok?
There's been a big spike in teenage girls who have or who self-diagnose as multiple personalities and or Tourette's, and it's from TikTok. Because there's like huge, viral accounts of people who may or may not suffer from these things, like doing daily sort of like, here's what it's like living with my disease. Oh God, it's so tough, but I'm making it through. And, like doing their weird little.
That's why we have to take TikTok by storm by creating Wolf Talk.
Wolf Talk.
I do
It's
feel like it's
Tourette's.
important that I warn everyone we're dancing dangerously close to talking about Will Smith right now.
We won't do it.
I mean, we should probably just get it out of the way, right?
Do we
I don't-
have to?
I don't think we should. I don't think we should do it.
We'll
I
take
think we'll
over the
fight.
rest of the day.
I
don't
we'll
think the
fight.
rest
I don't think.
I don't
Really?
think there's that much to say about it.
I have a lot to say. I
course.
Well,
find
now I
this
kind of want to know about what
fascinating.
you have to say about it.
If you have something to say about it, please do. How about that? Like,
Well-
if you have a genuine take
The
it away.
aspect that we're dancing close to right now is fuck method actors and using method acting as an excuse to act like a fucking ass.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
ridiculous.
Doing that, is he saying like, "Oh, I was just in the
It's what he
I've
said
been in
at
the
the
role of an
Oscars.
asshole for the last year, so now I'm just being an asshole."
That was his acceptance speech.
I didn't watch it because I hate this kind of like viral news, so I just don't watch it.
I was watching it in the bar as it aired, and that's exactly what he said. Like I've been
Somebody
playing
I was hanging out
this
with
guy
last
who
night
protects
said
his family.
Dan Deacon was there, and they saw him in the audience when
Yeah,
they were watching it, and they were like, "Oh, look, there's Dan."
He sat behind Questlove,
Right.
who was winning the award when Will slapped Chris Rock.
Oh.
It's also
Yeah.
the idea that language is violence, and in fact now language is more violent than actual violence is just fascinating. I'm very
Who
interested.
said that?
Twitter.
It's not been stated in those words, but
Oh, okay.
like people who are saying that Will Smith did the right thing are kind
Yeah, I
of
gotcha.
like that's the implication. And I'm not even saying that's not necessarily true. It's just a real intense world to live in.
Wasn't there tremendous backlash, though? Apparently, he resigned from the Academy because
Oh my God.
because of this stuff.
That's another aspect of this that's so fascinating and that we've already stated is annoying is like how much so many people care about this and split down the middle. No one can say
Which side
this
wins?
is obviously right. Like
I think that it is only funny when two very rich idiots hit each other on television. It's just good TV.
It's only yeah.
And then, like,
exactly.
That's
Well, and
like-
Chris Rock said it immediately, Like I told Joy when Will Smith hit Chris Rock, he didn't see birds or stars. He saw dollar signs.
Yeah.
I saw American
Yeah, all
soldiers going into Ukraine is what I saw when he hit him. Is that
Sure.
there's definitely an element of sorcery at play as far as like an image of justified violent retaliation.
Another,
Which is hilarious because we fucking started this shit.
yeah.
The idea of us being retaliatory is hilarious. Like the idea of the U.S. like ever doing anything in a retaliatory way is kind of hilarious.
Right, but
Right.
they said something. They said something they shouldn't have said about Ukraine, who is our Jake. We're in an open relationship with Ukraine. They said something they shouldn't have said, and Biden maybe he lost his temper a little bit, but he did the right thing.
I think one interesting problem is that there's no such thing as the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also have been getting some
vicious.
backlash from arguing
There's a
that
lot of
celebrities
wrong
aren't people.
There's a lot of wrong things though.
We're obsessed
Everything's
with
wrong.
the right thing more
Yeah.
than ever, and more than ever, there is no right thing.
Hmm.
Want it so bad. Everyone wants just to find that fucking right thing.
Well, that's why we have people are more obsessed with it. It's because it's so, like the uncertainty of not knowing the right thing is too much for people to bear.
Yeah.
This is thematically very close to a play that I'm writing, the tragedy of Onan.
A masturbation play?
Yeah, when you look at that story, it's a tragedy because Onan just doesn't want to have sex with a woman he's not in love with.
Oh my god.
But he has to because God says you got to make Jews in this way. So he ends up sacrificing his immortal soul to jerk off instead of having sex with this woman he doesn't like. It's a tragedy. It's according to poetics, it's a tragedy.
So, okay. I'm excited about to get to see a play about this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really. I thought of it last night. I'm really, really excited.
Ready.
Onan, and what a great hero for our times.
Unexplored aspect of today, really. I mean, there's some jokes that get fired off, but someone needs to tackle why these jokes resonate so much.
Yeah. So there it is. Onan. I also think that this, there not being a right thing is really close to the situation that Silk is in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, his God, in Ch.4, he confronts verbally with someone else for the first time the death of Paz.
Yeah.
You guys,
Everything.
there's a lot of shit. I hate to be this guy, but I'm gonna. But there's a lot of shit that in chapter 3 that we did not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have to go back. We didn't talk about Ock murdering Galata.
Yeah.
We didn't
talk
talk about
yeah.
Musk dying. We didn't talk about there's all
We-
kinds of
we
shit that happens.
barely
There's some
talked
crazy
about it.
little nuggets that happen when they're talking about the gods that I'm kind of wanted to get into. There's a part where Echidna's talking and she gets cut off, and obviously she's there's some funny thing that happens there. There's some.
Yeah, it's a chapter.
There's
3
a cool
thing.
thing where they drop a foreshadowing thing about Ock that I never noticed before. There's a lot of shit in. My pencil was on page 75, which is I don't know, maybe halfway through chapter 3.
Well, let's get through it then.
Yeah, let's comb our way through.
Hit your bullet points.
So what is on page 75 so I can find it?
Thetis.
Sadists?
Thetis, the
Thetis.
god, the minor god.
The password.
Oh, okay.
I think we
yeah.
did talk about that though.
We did talk
last
about
time,
that,
about
yeah.
the minor gods, so we could skip that. But that's just where my pencil was.
I find that a little. I found the description of the Paz bringing the augurs each year like a fleet. I found that to be a little bit confusing. Where Incus is
Scylla?
describing. Let's see. On 75, Incus is describing how I believe he's describing how the augurs are brought to the world, right?
I think
Well, brought to their calling.
I think Silk describes the same scenario
Yeah.
in a different part, and I think it gives more explanation. But I think what it is that all the boys of a certain age get on a boat, and if they feel called, they jump in the water, and then they join the world, the thing.
Some of the boats go nearer or further, nearer to Scylla or further away.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. In practice, what they do. And like Silk didn't even want to be an augur, but he was on the boat and he was like, fuck, and he jumped in the water, I think. Or am I making that up?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think that's something I think Silk describes his that moment in a different part. Either I guess we probably haven't read it, but Jen, you've read it, so maybe I'm making it up. I don't know.
I mean, I also I've read it, but I also my memory's not that good, and I these books are like sometimes it's like the more you remember, the more you forget, or something.
Definitely.
Like so,
every time you remember one thing, you can't be remembering another thing.
I mean, it's just
I've never read this book. I think I've never read any Teen Wolf.
All we can know is that we haven't really read this book.
I'm just working on it.
Well, we can start. We could start around here.
Yeah, let's talk about the tunnels because I don't super understand anything that happened in the tunnel.
I don't either. Like, what exactly are there? Like prison cells split off?
The prisoners. Some prisoners are burrowing out of the prison, and it gets them to the tunnels.
And isn't the prison
prisoners
just
are
like
in a pit?
a pit? Yeah.
They dig out of the pit.
We can put them in a pit.
But then they just go to the tunnels.
I'm still having a hard time like visualizing this though. So there's a
hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Everybody's naked.
Close your eyes. That's what it looks like.
Take off your clothes.
Take off your clothes.
This is a family show.
Close your eyes.
And then you're in the pit.
Start eating people.
Yes.
Then they dug through the wall of the pit into the tunnels. And then they met a bunch of hyenas.
Okay. I think that helps me clarify a little bit because I kind of pictured them being dropped down into the tunnels, I guess, and then for some reason I kind of was picturing there like being like even prison cells to the sides of the tunnels or something. But
I don't think
some of the descriptions. I mean, there's some of the descriptions in there just kind of like throw me off a little bit. They come. I think later this
there's a ramp. There's a ramp into the tunnel.
So they have to be. Sorry.
There's a ramp.
Yeah, later on when the hover car is crashing into the tunnel, and after that, like Silk loses Quetzal on that ramp. There's a ramp that goes down in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they're not. It's not a Jabba push a button, fall into rancor pit kind of situation.
Well, that's how Taluses can get down there.
Yeah.
On the ramp.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of different kind. And then there's like, it's like one of these things that's been like kind of like how Nessus is like a city that's been like built and rebuilt and built on top of for like forever and ever and ever. I feel like the tunnels are kind of like that too, where there's like things like there's like places where it's like collapsed into it. There's places where they're like intentional ramps. There's like all the little pits underneath the altars, and then there's and then there's like there's the stairs that go into them from Blood's place, and then there's like the submarine entrance cave, and then there's like and then I feel like later on, it must be in the last book, when like Mint's down there. Oh, I guess they go down from Blood's place. Way later? This is all very foggy to me to think about. But there are
earlier
rooms,
too.
There are some rooms down there. When they're down there, there's rooms. There's like
there's a bunch of stuff down there,
and then there's like all the soldiers are under there in those big cavernous rooms. So there's like kind of a lot going on. It's like a whole.
It's under the whole
city under a
it's
city
around them.
Is kind of how I think of it. Not like a fully built out city, but it's like it seems very complex.
I mean,
And
they're-
it's the cooling system or whatever.
but they're tunnels that go through the wrap around the entire wall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Exactly.
it's
In
actually
terms of
bigger.
square footage, it must be more.
Yeah,
than
it's
the
bigger
interior
than
of-
what is happening
yeah.
on their surface. Like
Mhm.
it's actually probably more important what's happening in the tunnels. What is
So-
sleeping in the tunnels?
It's
It's
a
more
certain,
important.
well, it's like a parallel reality.
Yeah.
It's funny that there's like 3 realms that each have the god that they should have, where Pos is the sky and the Flyers in the sun, and then Tartaros it has the dark bottom where all the secrets and how everything really works and all the wealth is, and in the middle is Echidna and all of her other children and with their cities.
And it's like the malfunctioning cooling system or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the AC.
Guys, this is a fantastic ship.
It's great.
Yeah.
Jumping ahead a little bit to chapter 4 is when Silk kind of realizes that, I mean, he realizes a lot of stuff, but he's like, oh, this place isn't meant to be forever.
Yeah.
It's a like a really interesting, like creeping in, you know, like this is a weird artificial place that wasn't meant to last.
When are we going to realize that?
On our
What did you
deathbeds.
say?
When are we going to realize that?
Like right before you die, when you realize that as above, so below makes this world a temporary place as much as a body.
And artificial.
Well, we get a lot of artificial bodies in these 2 chapters too. So
Yeah, these books are so cyberpunk.
It's true.
yeah,
It's so exciting.
I just noticed this little thing where when Marble is possessed by Echidna and she says and like Villis gets bit by the snake and Silk is like holding Villis and Echidna says Pause is dead and you a fool, give me Auk. And she thinks Villis is Auk. But it's like she knows that Paz is in Auk. Like it's like I just never caught that before. There's like they're on to the whole scheme. But it's weird that they haven't just like come for him before. It's weird that they would wait to the point. I mean, they must know all the different people who have the little pause bits.
Well, maybe they it's just now that they're able to figure it out in an actionable way.
Yeah.
So is the idea that I get this is getting more into chapter 4, so I'll save it. Let's still talk.
I think it's legal.
Yeah, we all read 4, so we might as well
right.
mix them up.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't like just gloss over the rest of 3. Like if there, if there's nothing else anyone wants to talk about from 3, that's fine. But
there is. We got to
Jordan
talk
has a
about
thing.
it.
But
We can talk about
I don't
both.
think that means we have to wait till we've done all
Right.
3 to talk about.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter.
So the reason that that Pas's family killed him and I guess is continuing to try to kill him is because they don't want the long sun.
Exodus.
Yeah, they want to keep everybody there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Because they want to maintain their like realm. They
Right.
like being in. They like their realm.
And the
and
digital people now.
right. And Silk is a way to keep people there.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to Auk, who's the way that everybody gets off.
Moses.
Right. Interesting.
Silk has nothing he can do that is correct.
Right.
Everything he does is world-endingly bad.
And he's got Quetzal in his ear now, so
An inhuman force.
Who is very sympathetic for an inhuman.
Well, kind of. The only people who could have a good perspective on humanity are the people who aren't human, right? Like they're the only ones who can view it from the outside.
Well, also, I feel like the whole long story arc with the Inhumai is them being sympathetic. It's like the point of them.
Yeah. Well, because all they are is what they found in us.
Exactly.
So anything we
It's-
don't
well,
like
it's
about
like
them
the
is
mo-
just what we don't like about ourselves.
Exactly. Like the more sympathy you find for them, the more loathing you find for yourself.
Mhm.
Johan's in the chat, and he
Yawn
said
in the chat.
that he thinks there has to be something important about how Lake of Long Sun is about secrets under the water, and this book has secrets under the ground. Maybe the last one is about secrets in the heavens.
Well, the last one is spent on an airship.
And they go to mainframe.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't hear about what happens in mainframe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's secret.
It's secret.
Oh, I love
That's
it
like
so
the-
much.
Man, that part of Short Sun is so fucking good.
Oh, yeah.
My God. Anyway. Kenny. What are you doing?
Cool. Well, we can go back to talking about chapter 3. What else is there to talk about?
Well, then I just think that whole echidna part is kind of wild. Because then, like, right after she says the thing about Ock, she's like, there's like something going on. She's like, can't complete a thought.
Are you talking about when she's like kind of talking about like the? No, I'm mixing it up. There's with something else where
It's
she's
the
like
very
talking about
top
like,
of-
the calculator or something.
Exactly. No, that's it. That's it. The top of 87. He's like, oh, I didn't know you could possess chems. I thought you could only possess bios. And she's like, it's easier. But then she's just like, what mean these numbers? Why should we let you? My husband, the
Yeah,
prime calcula, his citadel. Like something's happening. Is that like something's happening actively in mainframe? And she's like,
Oh, I think that it's exactly that she didn't realize she was possessing a
yeah.
non-biological thing, and something
oh
Because
yeah.
it's
So it's
working
like
digitally
it's
instead of
marbles.
chemically.
It's
Yeah,
marbles.
they have like binary vision inside of them, right? When especially if they're like older and like kind of malfunctioning.
Well, what
That's
this,
that's
what
kind of
this-
how I saw it.
It's the
what this
Matrix.
feels like to me is like Echidna's trying to say something to the bios, but because
Mhm.
she's in a chem, she says it in chem speak, the prime
Mhm.
calcula and stuff like that. Like the robots can talk in numbers, and the humans just have lost all that math. So it doesn't. It's a translation kind of thing almost.
Yeah.
I think.
Could be, yeah. Yeah. It is like kind of intriguing / almost frustrating, although like artfully so, when Gene Wolfe does these kinds of things where it's like, it's just like it gets like fuzzy, like he reaches a fuzzy border to the to the action where it starts to like the meaning isn't clear. All
Yeah.
you can see is like the mystery, but you can't clarify it really.
He has a very outward looking perspective on science, where I feel like for a lot of people that aren't engineers or whatever, science like establishes a firm limit on the universe and we know nothing's beyond there.
Right.
Where I feel like Gene Wolfe goes up to that limit and keeps looking and says like,
Stretches
we're
through it,
just,
stretch.
yeah, we're like a primitive man standing on the ground guessing about the stars. We're just doing it with a, more vocabulary to guess with.
And one interesting aspect of when Quetzal and Silk are speaking later, first of all, it's just interesting how Quetzal is manipulating Silk, right? He's giving Silk the real story, but it's like obviously like so full of holes and like just like so artfully displayed to Silk to manipulate him. But it's interesting when Quetzal says, "Oh, well, the charter was written by the gods, and the gods provided us such and such technology because they they knew that would, that would serve us best. That was in their opinion, that like, floaters would serve us best and horses, but not heavy machinery. And that got me thinking, and I was like, have I read any other story where it's about, or it involves creation myths, where the creation myths involve like technology, like the gods have bestowed upon you floaters, like usually it's like what, like thunder or fire or like whatever. Maybe there is, like, do gods bestow wheels upon people in any like old myths or anything like that? Like maybe they do. I don't know.
In a cargo cult, maybe, but that's not really old, I guess.
I mean,
what's that?
Oh,
cargo cults are like, I mean, they're like the Pacific Asia and African, right? Where American warplanes or something would have been downed or jettisoned, like goods that fell from the sky, and then tribal peoples who didn't have a whole lot of contact with the West necessarily would like have to explain where did all this stuff come from out of the sky and invent these.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. That is interesting. It's like that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, where like a pilot like absently throws like a Coke bottle out the window, and then the tribesman finds it, and he's like, he has to like return it to the gods.
Yeah, there's like a real world precedent for that called cargo cults.
Gotcha. Cool.
The Smith god is associated with technology.
That's true. Yeah, I mean the hammer. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Hephaestus has tripods that move on their own in very old stories.
And the Kabairoi are often robot people that carry them around and help them.
Hephaestus and then, does have straight up technology.
He does.
Well, it's not to say that the myths don't involve technology, but it's like, are there instances where it's like the god has bestowed upon us floaters?
Well, I think fire kind of counts. The Promethean myth is that in a big way, and then but then it's sort of how he got in trouble for doing it.
And then in the Bible, technology comes from, I believe, Tubal-Cain, and it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well, it says Cain in it, so they should have realized.
And because Cain was his like great grandfather or something, and then Tubal-Cain is the bad guy in Darren Aronofsky's Noah, which is an insane movie.
I didn't realize there was a villain in that movie.
Yeah, it's Tubal-Cain, who's played by the wrestler. What's his name there? Mickey Rourke. Rooney.
Rourke.
Rourke.
Whoa.
Interesting.
Old Leatherface.
Is that a good movie?
It's, as a Bible nerd who went there to actually about the Bible, I spent the whole movie actually. There's nothing about the Bible in that movie. It's insane.
I remember seeing it when it came out and being like, this is the worst movie.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then the next movie he made was Mother, and he thinks that he was like that Mother is about the same thing Noah is about, that it's some eco thing, but it's not. It's so good. He accidentally made this amazing like deep movie, and he has no idea. That man's an idiot.
Yeah,
I would say that his movies are always been kind of frustrating.
Yeah,
I feel like I haven't seen many of them past Requiem for a Dream, if any. I'm not sure.
I strongly encourage everyone to watch Mother.
I have seen that one. Yeah,
we did. Kenny and I like last year sometime. We were on our all Jewish movies thing, which involved lots of different kinds of movies. But we watched Pi.
Oh yeah,
and it was like actually pretty good. I enjoyed that movie. I enjoyed it. I was like, this is actually a pretty good movie.
I love Pi.
Pi's kind of cool. Yeah.
It sort of seemed like it was downhill from there to me. Like,
I feel like if I watched Requiem for a Dream now, I would be like, this is not like.
It's frustrating.
I have a hard time imagining having that response to that movie or any of the other ones. But I was surprised by how much I enjoyed watching Pi.
I think that Mother is as good as Pi.
You just like saying it that way.
It's the way that it's written.
Wait,
It has an exclamation.
Yeah, it has an
point on it.
exclamation point.
It
It's
starts
been a
with
while.
an ellipsis.
It's a really good movie. I thought that was a really good movie.
It's been a while since I've watched it. So is it or is it not about ecology? Is it?
It's
He
not
thinks
that explicit. It doesn't have
he
to
thinks
be,
that
but
it's about like us destroying the world with pollution, right?
Yeah, he thinks it's about God and Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the artist and the art.
right.
Which, I mean, sure, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
except that his is really specific to what he's obsessed with.
It's
And
open
I
ended.
found what I brought to it, you know.
Yeah, like you can bring all kinds of interpretations to it. I don't. He intentionally didn't cage it in or make it explicit, in my opinion. Like even if he has his ideas, I mean that makes sense and that lines up. But you can. It's just a trip. Like you can read into it in any kind of way. Really.
I started to feel in this read that very convinced that there's a change in Gene Wolfe in the New Sun and Long Sun that involves him coming to really truly believe that the way to understand the world and God is to understand an author and its work. I feel like in this book, he's like, I feel like in Long Sun, he's kind of like, he suspected it, but it's kind of it's a little out there, and it was just like an artistic idea. And I feel like the thing that really changes in this book is he goes, no, it's true. It is true that God is the author and we are characters. And that's the best way to understand how this universe works. And that's why the shift from like the unreliable first person of Severian to the sort of hidden and clever narration of Horn, like I feel that partially is like enabled by Wolfe coming fully to identify God as an author.
I feel like that tracks well with my dickish philosophy of we're all just tiny pieces of God that forgot that we're a part of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that is exactly what characters in an author's story are.
Yeah. And in an author's story, characters can like take a life of their own and surprise the author, which really I feel like would explain like a creator who and free will, where a creator doesn't completely understand why characters are doing things until he sees the characters doing the things.
I definitely discover things about myself. Like I write a story, go back and then be like, oh shit, I have totally learned something horrible about myself by watching this character moving around here.
Yeah. That's why I think the best stories. Oh, and I watched all of White Lotus. You watched that, right, Connor?
I love White Lotus, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the thing about Mike White is a very similar thing to David Milch and Deadwood is that they love every character in their stories and they know all those characters are themselves. And that like the huge thing I think that separates writers like Mike White and David Milch, who can just like blow me away from other authors who don't recognize that all the characters are themselves and will like have it out for some of them. Like that writing is just feels so different. Like when somebody's making a scapegoat of the little piece of themselves that they've inserted in their fiction, like you can really feel it. You can really feel.
You know what I've been watching? I've been watching the '97 Berserk anime, and
cool.
I feel exactly the same thing when I watch it. I feel like I'm like literally looking into this guy's brain, like whoever wrote it, and he just like had these very specific, intense feelings that are actually like relatable, and you don't really see like dramatized that well. But I know what you mean, Ryan. Like when I actually get the sense that it's a highly personal story, even though it's in this fantastical world. He's almost with that. It's almost like broken down too, like within like archetypes that exist in one person too, in a way. You know, like I don't know if everyone here's seen that, but it's basically just like about ambition, and maybe manhood, for lack of a better word. I'm not sure, but
it's got the best love triangle
story
of like modern stories. I feel like the love triangle of Casca, Guts, and Griffith is so good. Yeah.
By the way, I haven't finished it yet. I have like 5 episodes, so I know there's probably not going to be a happy ending. But
there's going to be bigger swords. They keep getting bigger. I think that what we're describing is similar to my understanding of what Gestalt therapy is, when you take aspects of yourself and project them into characters and then talk to them. which is also kind of similar to core shamanism.
And its archetypal psychology is very similar, preserving and mediating between the different archetypes within you rather than trying to smoosh them into one integrated whole.
Meredith practices something called parts therapy, which I feel like is sort of similar.
Did you say parts?
It's called parts therapy.
Yeah, it sounds good right off the bat.
I like parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like her thing that she does, her practice. I think she does other things, but I think that's her main thing.
Is it from Australia?
I don't know.
Does it involve dream time?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really know much about it. I've just assumed that I've assumed things about it based on the name of it, but I don't really know that much about it. I haven't researched it or anything, or really gone in depth talking to her about it.
I have, in a limited capacity, experienced parts work before, and it's cool. It's neat. The end.
Calligraphy there?
Say more about it, or try to.
Yeah, where did you encounter it?
My friend Rose Chase has I think it's from California. But she has a friend who was a therapist of her mother. And then she has a therapist. But she does group sessions, but I don't think it's I think she kind of does her own thing though. She probably doesn't do exactly the same thing that Meredith does, and I have no insight into if that matters or not. I just had a cool, interesting experience. Oh, because she does you can book her, you can ask her to come and do a session with you and 6 or 9 people or something like that. And we did one at my house a couple years ago. And it was cool.
Rose Chase.
It was a couple weeks after me, Ryan, and among other people did the clown workshop with Justin Durrell, and they're really similar. They're dipping into the same bucket. They're different, but they're dipping into the same bucket.
Yep.
I really hope Justin comes back again soon.
Yeah.
Well, he's very close to the war.
Yeah.
Bring him back. We need more clowns.
Yeah, come on, Biden. What are you doing?
Clowns. We need
Bring
more
the
clowns.
Justin home.
Clowns.
We need
Bring in the clowns. Send in the clowns.
Where are the clowns? Well,
We'd be a lot better off if we had more clowns.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. It's a simple request, I think.
Yeah. More clowns.
You could get clowns for pretty cheap, probably too. I mean, good investment on your dollar.
Definitely.
I'm going to invest in clowns.
Yeah.
I've been working a lot with clown futures. Clown
They're coming back.
Speculation.
They're coming back. The younger generations don't have the same weird fear of them that ours does.
I think that they actually have a greater fear of clowns than we do.
I don't know.
Because there aren't clowns anymore. The only clowns that have happened is that weird wave of lurking clowns in Virginia a few years ago, and
Joker.
Circus clowns.
And Joker.
We don't need more circus clowns.
In Mexico, in Lucha Libre promotions, there are a bunch of clown wrestlers.
Cool.
And they are mostly faces. Everybody loves them. But they're also one of the biggest baby faces in AAA is Psycho Clown, who's a clown character. His mask has a big tongue that comes off of it. He's gross and weird, and everybody fucking loves it.
Oh.
There's also like
Those are the
this
best.
this kind of like noise musician style clown
Oh my god.
named Pagano. He does hardcore matches, and everybody loves him too.
Hit someone with like a sine wave generator, or how does the noise come into it?
That's his sort of aesthetic. He just sort of looks like a guy
A noise
who
ninja.
you would see playing at INC or something.
I mean, I think that it's very easy to see lightning bolts as clowns.
Yeah,
The band Lightning Bolt.
Uh-huh.
Definitely.
With their masks and stuff.
yeah, the mask.
Yeah. And even like the
Almost
kind of
anything could be a
music,
clown.
there's like I feel like a almost, it's not ironic, but there is like a somewhat detached appreciation of heavy metal that's going on that is a little bit clownish.
Have you seen the Clowncore band?
ICP?
No, it's this like it's like this weird like jazz grind band that they wear clown masks, and all of their vocals are like really guttural. It's sort of a like a John
But
Zorn
not.
kind of thing. They're good though. They're really
Hasn't
good.
hasn't
Oh,
McDonald's
wait, are you talking about Imperial Triumphant?
No, I'm not.
What is that?
They're more like Eyes Wide Shut core, but they're like jazz.
What?
They are kind of like that. No,
That's
no,
not
clown.
Taylor
The
You
band is
just
called.
made that term up. That term did not exist before you said it just now. Am I correct in that?
I want it though.
Oh yeah, I would love to be wrong in that there's a whole Eyes Wide Shut
I'm
core
excited.
scene.
I'm excited about the answer.
That's Imperial Triumphant's kind of like that. I mean, that's their whole aesthetic for sure.
Yeah, they look
No,
like they're
the clown core is just called clown core, and they wear clown masks, and they perform
Okay.
in like porta potties and stuff.
That's terrible.
Finally.
That's
they
the worst
perform
thing
in
I've heard.
porta
Most of
potties?
their songs are about shit, so
I don't
Uh,
like that. That's something I don't
they're
like.
pretty good. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, I was going to ask, hasn't McDonald's intentionally drawn back Ronald? We've got a lot less Ronald
Yeah.
in our
Oh.
culture for a while now. And it also seems that like juggalos were a thing that nobody talks about or is interested in what the juggalos are doing anymore, like they were, around SNL Magnets time.
I feel like the Juggalo thing is just that they've become a lot more like they're not really a novelty anymore to most people, and they're also pretty innocuous. Like as a group of people, like most hatred for Juggalos is just like hating poor people.
Is it still a thing though? Like, do they still have the
Definitely.
Juggalo
I
effect?
think
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
been like normalized, sort of.
Yeah, it's just not that. It's not that like everybody
Oh,
knows
that's
about
scandalous.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's become kind of accepted.
What do they call it? The gathering of the clowns.
The gathering of the Juggalos.
They're like undeniably the most successful American independent music band that has ever existed. So they have a huge, like they do have a really important place, I feel like, in the history of American music, but it's one that like the official chroniclers of the history of American music right now are very uncomfortable with.
Yeah, it's not tasteful.
No. And it's weird to have, I mean, it's threatening to music journalists too, that someone who is so like antithetical to their own tastes would actually be more successful than in like a genuinely admirable way than anything that they would like to deem, like more important for our culture.
I don't know. I feel like music critics have to be pretty aware of a lot of stuff that's going to do very well that's not their personal taste.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of the other stuff can fit into the narrative in a way that ICP is really disruptive to the narrative. Like, because they actually have like better ethics than other like more well-respected entities within the music industry. And that's
But they
like,
look so gross.
yeah.
There was a lot of conversation about this surrounding Dave Chappelle's fiasco. I saw a lot of people saying, you know who is really accepting of everyone? The Juggalos.
Yeah. That's their function. They are like, they're embracing anyone who feels outcasts. They're like, we're a place you can go. You don't have to come here. And if you don't understand it, we get it, but you can come here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very, like, they laid it out on the table with the final Joker card. Like, they've been Christian the whole time. and they're just funny about it. They just have a sense of humor about their religion and are like appropriately modest for the creed.
Yeah.
Are any of their early albums kind of worth listening to? Does anyone know?
Kenny's the person to talk to about this.
What is the one?
He's like gone in there a little bit.
Great Malenko, Riddle Box. I think it's like, I don't know. I've tried.
It's not great. Like it just isn't.
Yeah. I feel like there's certain songs that are easy to appreciate like on their own, but like taking the whole albums, I feel like you got to be really deep in to like appreciate the whole album.
Yeah.
They don't really, there's not a lot of surprises except sometimes lyrically there's funny surprises.
Yeah, there's some like anti-KKK song that they have that Kenny thinks is really cool.
Chicken Hun is,
or it's like a anti-Confederate.
About the musical aspects, like, does it sound cool?
I mean, I do really like that Miracles song. I think that song is like
that's like a whole other thing.
It's good in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't call their like
book.
production or like there's nothing really about their style that's like all that, you know. They're not really innovators. Like you know, they're just sort of like you know.
I only remember being in high school and like maybe being in someone's car and I think they were playing ICP, but I don't actually know. But whatever they were playing like kind of sounded cool and like it had like this like intense like kind of like gothic organ sound and like and they were just like I don't know, like rapping about like evil shit. Like it sounded kind of cool. I'm not 100%.
It's possible that you were listening to Twisted.
Or Mob Deep, maybe.
They were white dudes rapping for sure.
Oh, okay. It wasn't Mob Deep then.
The Twisted were the proteges of ICP and had like a much more, I feel like modern kind of cool musical aesthetic. And also, I feel like they're both, like honestly, their rapping was a little bit higher caliber than, I mean, Shaggy 2 Dope is just like, he's a funny, great guy to hang out with. Not really as much of a rapper. But you can understand with his personality why he's up there. He's like an integral part of the formula. But like, I feel like you might have heard Twisted because Twisted has a lot of songs that are like, ooh, like the production is neat. Or like, but yeah, the production in ICP songs is very conservative.
Yeah. Yeah. Not going too hard. But that's all right. Like, you know, they found their niche and people love them. So
and they have Psychopathic Records where all like the weird experimental kind of stuff can kind of leak out and people can play around within the genre on their label. They're like patrons of more like out there stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're neat people. They're like watching the commentary on their DVD movies, or like there was a thing that was happening where they were like, they had Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope in a theater and someone would show them a music video and they just Beavis and Butthead it. And those things are always so funny. They're kind of like Weird Al. Like their straight comedy stuff is always good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple of those and they are good.
Yeah, like Violent J is clearly like a little Midwest white trash genius who's humble about it. So it's like, it's really easy not to pick up unless you spend some time with him. You go, this guy he's got a lot going on up there.
He's also had one of the most like, I think, successful rebounds from having said some kind of off shit in his past. He's come very I think in a lot of their early music there's a lot of homophobia and stuff, and now he's just like, I was stupid, I was just saying all that stuff to try to sound hard, like that's not what's up. And it's been like totally accepted. Like people are like, yeah, you know what, he does seem like he's gotten better, which so few celebrities are able to pull off.
Yeah,
I mean, that's part of the function of people. The people who make that kind of noise just aren't paying attention to them, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's certainly true.
Yeah, and I mean, his culture has forgiveness built into it, and the idea that you can come back to the fold in a way that like mainstream culture is not into. Mainstream culture is too clever to let people repent. We know that that's a trick.
Right.
Yeah.
This is making me
it's
think of
interesting.
Bittersweet Symphony on a million different people from one day to the next.
Yeah, that can change.
I don't know.
I
Netflix
can't
recommended
change.
that I watch Aziz Ansari's like stand-up special, and I was like, "Huh, interesting." Like they're giving a like Aziz Ansari kind of was like on like the tightrope of cancellation, I guess.
His
Right.
was
Yeah.
a really weird kind of cancellation though, because it was essentially for a bad date.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
It was
bad,
there's
poor, uncomfortable behavior, but not.
it was the kind of
didn't-
thing that didn't need like a whole like I think there was a media some blog or something that was like trying to really scoop it and this be like a big
Right.
deal. And it ended up just being like bad journalism about a guy who should have done better. So
Yeah.
I heard that new special is pretty interesting. I haven't watched it though.
Yeah, I watched it. It was fine. It's very like understated. It's like very intimate. It's like him at like some small like whatever that comedy club in New York is, where like
The Comedy Cellar.
it's a small like kind of like bar where
or he doesn't
tables
wear
are,
a
like,
suit, right? He just like wears a t-shirt.
Yeah, he just looks like a hipster. Maybe he has like a hat on or something.
I really
He's
like
just, like,
Aziz
sitting down.
Ansari's Randy
Randy.
where he talks about going down on a girl when she's in the hot tub. It's really funny. You should check it out.
What is it?
On YouTube.
He came up with this character called it was a stand-up comic character named Randy with like 8 A's. And he has a DJ on stage all the time, and he just tells really hacky jokes. But has like a lot of catchphrases and stuff.
He rules. Randy's so cool.
That was the best thing that came out of that Judd Apatow movie with Adam
That was a whole
Sandler.
movie? I thought that was just something he did.
No, I think it was a bit that he created for, or at least they put it in that movie.
It was created for the movie.
Funny
I
people.
only know that that routine. I don't know anything about it, where it came from. I just think
Funny people.
Funny
and
people.
everyone
Not a
should
great
watch
movie, but Randy is great.
Randy's.
Wendy.
Yeah.
Randy.
I hate to bust into chapter 4 again, but something about what we were just talking about reminded me of a thing that struck me last night in chapter 4, which is that Ock is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that before, but it definitely is intentionally Arnold. Like, I feel like Gene Wolfe told us in chapter 4, Ock is Arnold.
Really?
Yeah. When he says,
I'll be back.
when he basically says, remember when I said I'd kill you last? I lied.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, that moment is an Arnold Schwarzenegger moment 100%. That moment is considered this a divorce. And then suddenly I'm like looking back, M. Night style, and realizing like at every point, Ock has been like Arnold. He's this huge, brutal dude who has this incredibly sensitive side and can be vulnerable and like, loses his temper and then feels bad about it. It's all stuff that Arnold is great at.
It's kind of an archetypal character that was huge in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, right? Like Arnold was like front and center in like American consciousness at that time. Like,
for sure.
Like hit after hit. And those movies were like tapping straight into just like
he
right
was totally the
human
peak
psyche.
American ideal of like a guy who comes from another country for a better life, works out and makes himself into a thing that people love and can. And
he came from an evil country too.
Yeah.
And so many of those movies are actually good too, where it's like,
for sure.
I mean, the first 2 Terminators are great.
Total Recall's awesome.
Total Recall's amazing.
Hercules in New York,
like good picks.
Predator, like Commando.
Commando is really funny. And
I saw Commando. It's great.
Arnold Schwarzenegger tricked Sylvester Stallone into being Throw Mama from the Train.
What?
Arnold Schwarzenegger like let leak, I really want to be in this movie, so that Sylvester Stallone would be in that movie, and then it turned out to be a horrible movie, and Arnold Schwarzenegger had just pranked Sylvester Stallone.
Wasn't that a pretty good movie? Was that Danny DeVito and
Danny
Crystal.
DeVito made it. It was his first movie.
All right. Well, there's a movie that I get. It's not the Billy Crystal movie. It's another movie that involves the word train in the title.
Stop or My Mom Will Shoot? Is it Stop?
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
It wasn't
Oh
a
my
train. It was
God.
Mom.
That's an amazing prank. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger tricked him into being in that.
I was reading about Total Recall recently, and I never knew that Arnold had really wanted to be in them to make a movie, and he wanted to be in it, and he like shepherded it through different studios, like making sure that he would be in it, and had to do a lot of like behind the scenes maneuvering. But he was like kind of obsessed with the idea of being the lead in this Philip K. Dick story, which is a dimension of Arnold I feel like a lot of people don't realize is there.
Yeah. I don't picture him reading Philip K. Dick, but that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a total shocker to me that like another studio had bought the rights, and Arnold was like, I'm going to be in this. And they were like, nah, you're not the guy for this. And Arnold was like, yeah, no, I really want to be in this. And then there was difficulties with the script for years and years, and Arnold kind of just was hovering over it until the studio went bankrupt, and then he convinced somebody else to buy it and said, I'll be in it. It'll definitely be a hit. Ended up like scheming his way past there was like 10 directors or something attached, and he's like schemed his way through all of that to eventually get the lead role against a lot of other people's like better judgment.
Yeah. Well, Verhoeven was the guy.
Verhoeven
Sense. Was the guy to help him out with.
It makes sense that he wouldn't be the natural fit for the lead in that movie.
It's like not that much of an action movie.
Kind of. I mean, they make it into one, right? But a Philip K. Dick book usually has like a more wiry, like kind of, like edge of society kind of dude. Like,
are you talking about Total Recall right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was criticism at the time about movies like Commando and Predator, where there's like, he just shoots people. He's just always shooting people. And so there was like a concerted effort by Verhoeven and Arnold to be like, in this movie, I'm not going to just shoot people. I'm going to dispatch them through other means that are clever.
Like a drill.
Of dispatchment.
Yeah, but still badass. Not badass.
Exploding head.
Paul is the only person who understands America enough to have made that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Have you seen RoboCop?
Yes.
So good.
I watched
Starship
the commentary
Troopers.
for RoboCop recently, and it's pretty good.
So good.
It's very, very good.
The commercials in RoboCop?
I'd
buy that for $1.
Paul talks about how he doesn't like guns, but on the set of RoboCop, his wife and daughter got into guns, and they go to the range all the time together, and they learn. And he's like, he doesn't go. He's like, I don't like guns. He's Paul Verhoeven, and like in that scene where the guy gets shot a bunch of times, he said that the prop guy just went out and bought all the ketchup he could find in the whole a certain
Harris Teeter.
Yeah, he just went and like all the ketchup, and then the last fun story I remember from it is that scene where they're like, they shot it in Dallas, and the Dallas Fire Department was really angry with them because they blew up they had that huge explosion, multiple huge explosions, and then but then eventually they got the fire department on their side, and everyone started to like them. And then so they were about to tear down a block of shops, and they were like, you can just go and destroy this if you want. And they were like, hell yeah. So that's the scene where they're like on the abandoned street and they're just like destroying shit. And then one guy shoots into a store, and there's this huge explosion, but he wasn't expecting the explosion, and his hair caught on fire and stuff.
Oh no.
That movie fucking rules. The end.
The great movie. The end.
Oh, the people in this book who are the government are RoboCop.
Yeah.
Literally.
But they like it. They're into it.
Well, they're all the like reject robots that didn't actually become RoboCop.
Wait a minute, what?
Well, you know how like they have all those other robots that just like are going, oh, this is RoboCop 2. They're trying to make another RoboCop, and it just drives everyone insane. So they like just shoot everybody and then shoot themselves in the face and stuff like that. I think Diane Indio is more like that. Anyway, Chapter 4, 3.
3-4.
Have we moved on to this? So we've talked about the possession by Echidna. So the next thing is Musk's appearance, right?
Yep.
The next beat.
Old Muscovite, the bad guy.
He gets burned alive.
Bad timing to show up at the same time as Echidna, huh?
And Mukor.
Yeah.
3-4. Yeah.
There's a lot going on here.
Well, it's like they attracted all the snakes, right? So
Like an anti Patrick.
right.
Let's see. What happens with that?
Anti-Patrick.
Anti-Patrick? What?
Well,
The
St.
Irish
Patrick
one.
expelled all the snakes out of Ireland, but
Oh.
now they've drawn all the snakes here.
Oh.
Oh, I was reading a thing recently that I've been reading of this. Yeah, okay, so it's from Tibet, this epic that I've learned about, King Geezer. And there's a bit in it, I'm just at the very beginning, but there's a bit in it that apparently in Tibetan mythology, there's a like there's kind of an Adam and Eve kind of Deucalion Pyrrha couple that both have the lower bodies of a snake. And so the female part of that couple has a lot of echidna qualities. I thought was interesting that maybe I don't know, it might be the universal resonance of such a theme, and not any direct knowledge that Wolfe had of this like Asian myth. But I when I got to that part in King Geezer's background, I was like, this woman sounds exactly like a kid.
Well, I mean, it seems like those people are related to the Avestan Nogs, which
Yes.
I mean, you can definitely draw a mythographic line from that concept back to the Greeks' echidna. I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah. They're Nagini that's what they're called. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, neat.
that line can be drawn.
But yeah, that was like with reading that, I was like, synchronicity with also reading about Echidna, terrifying Echidna.
Queen of monsters, mother of monsters. Amelia Clark.
Is she done?
Amelia? No, she's going to be in Secret Invasion on Disney Plus.
Secret Invasion.
Oh boy.
Yeah, she's playing the Queen of the Skrulls.
Huh.
Neat. Oh, wait, that's a Marvel thing?
It is.
Could only be.
The Skrulls are pretty cool. I don't know.
That's kind of where she belongs. I feel like that's her skill level. Is
Who are we talking about?
green screen.
Echidna.
Echidna,
We're talking about
coming back?
Daenerys. Yeah.
Well,
Oh.
Daenerys is the mother of dragons. Echidna is the mother of monsters. That's the mythographic overlap to me.
Reptiles involved.
And now
too.
she's the Queen of Skrulls. She's also been Sarah Connor.
So we think she's Echidna, yeah.
Yeah, Amelia Clark is a priestess of.
And it's so funny because she's one of the actresses who just like, I guess just round face actresses who always to me seem like they should be playing like younger people. And so it's hard for me to see her as Sarah Connor because they look different. They maybe look similar in superficial ways, but she looks too like cherubic. She looks like nice, you know.
There's kind of the roles that she picks gives her a kind of mintiness, you know.
Mintiness, yeah.
You know, she's a small, innocent-looking person who's always playing someone who wants to burn the city down.
Like, I don't think that somebody with a round face can't be a mother or can't be old. I just think it's a weird from a casting point of view. But it's about star power. Nobody cares about what people are right.
I feel like she also kind of acts like a goddess has thought they were possessing a bio, but possessed a chem.
I saw her in a movie where I thought she was well cast because it was just some like low stakes kind of like whatever movie where it's like, I think it was called like Voice from the Stone or something, where it's like a period piece, and she goes to be like the governess of this orphan boy. No, the mom died, the dad is alive, and the dad is mean and she falls in love with the dad, but like there's the kid is like, no, my mom is a ghost and she lives inside of the house, and everyone's like, no, it's something else, it's not really that. But it turns out, yes, it is literally just there's a ghost. That's the mom, and it inhabits. Oh, and this is fucking echidna. The mom inhabits her Daenerys Stormborn, and she now is the living embodiment of the other. Literally, that's what happens in the movie. Interesting. I was wondering why I was talking about it, and it managed to make sense.
She's possessed by the mother.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Oh. I do have some part smarts that I thought were weird. Oh, I already asked about that one.
Oh yeah, in chapter 4, there's a good amount.
We're in 3.
We're in 4.
We're in 3. We still haven't gotten to the back into the tunnels.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about the tunnels. Let's just
so
go for it.
We're leaving the assassination attempt now.
Are we?
I mean, well, okay. I didn't mark anything there. I mean, it's interesting. Quetzal comes out.
Quetzal talks to Mucor by name too.
Yeah, he knows her.
He slaps the needler out of her Cassava's hand and says, "Don't, Mucor."
Yeah.
Yeah. They're buds. Like he's already sick of her shit because he's like he knows Mucor, right? Like that's what this
must.
I feel like Quetzal magically knows everything. Like literary, he's just the embodiment of I'm so old and I have a finger in every. He's got a touch of the autarch to him, but a little bit more in control than the autarch. Like the autarch can't get out of his position. You know, he's a product of the system. I think Quetzal, being inhuman, kind of has more control than the autarch does, but less reason to be there.
The autarch, in my mind, has like a little bit more of a grand sense of humor. You know, he's a little bit more of like
he's a victim,
an absurdist or something. Yeah, and I think Quetzal does not. I think he's like almost pure calculation. And it's like something that's like very pleasurable to read about the character, because you realize from his interaction with what's his name at the beginning of this book, what's that guy's name, Remora? You realize that he's like always 3 steps ahead. And it's interesting later on in 4 when the captain is coming to shoot Silk, apparently, that Quetzal I would argue, is probably aware of what's happening as that's happening too. Even though I guess maybe not, because he would probably act to help Silk. But he at least is aware that something is happening. someone's drawing.
I feel like I wouldn't even be surprised if Quetzal, if at some point Quetzal reveals that he knows he's in a book. You know, he just knows everything. He knows. It'll be interesting to compare him to other Inhumai when we meet them in later books. Because Quetzal, he knows what's going on more than they do, even. And I think it's maybe part of being away from every other creature and only eating humans for a while.
There's a difference between him and the other Inhumai, because I think, well, there's a lot of differences, but there's also the difference between him and the Autarch also is that the Autarch kind of like has this thing like foisted on them, and you're like, you just like get this hit of all this information, and you have to figure out how to assimilate it. But Quetzal's been like building this for himself for like many, many years or whatever. He's like been creating this reality and like amassing information and like having it all his eyes on the ground, you know, like it's a slightly different in that, like, I think that's like what you're talking about, him having more control or whatever. It's like he's doing that intentionally, but then also the other, he's also, it's like he's been embedded in this thing for so long that And there are, it seems to me there are there are obviously other Inhumai in the world or whatever, but not very many, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah.
So that would be a big
Quetzal
difference.
is still alone, I think.
Right. Like, it's not like he's interacting with his fellow.
But also the vector of power for both Quetzal and the Autarch is blood. The consumption of.
Yeah.
But it is a kind of Yankee versus cowboy. Quetzal is a Howard Hughes self-made man, and the Autarch is a Rockefeller inherited wealth kind of person who doesn't know what the hell to do with it, you know?
GW. Yeah, W.
Good old Dub.
Look at this shit that I gotta do now. Yeah, so maybe that's
Quetzal's insane. Quetzal is an insane character.
The fact that he knows Mucor and is like apparently familiar with her enough just to be like, don't, is really endearing.
Yeah.
Like that he cares about somebody on that level and like treats them basically with respect. Like that is real. I mean, it makes me really like Quetzal.
It's like being the principal of the school and you just know like every kid.
Yeah.
Even if like they don't realize that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
and you eat them.
It's also like in Riverdale when like the thing that I always mention when I talk about how crazy Riverdale is, which is like doesn't even rate anymore, but it's Jughead, who is a poor child at high school, whose dad is in the gang, in the town gang, and you know, just like bottom of the barrel of Riverdale, so to speak. And then the mayor takes Jughead into her office and is like, Jughead, if you write articles in the school newspaper, what's going on with our real estate shenanigans, I'm going to come down on you so hard. Like, the fucking mayor knows intimate details of Jughead's life. It makes no fucking sense.
It's a very small town.
That's true.
It's an insane town.
I love it.
No one in that town has a scrap of sanity.
It's true. They all
Riverdale is like a Lovecraftian creation. Those people are mad.
Hell yeah. I love a small town like Cabot Cove in Murder, She Wrote, which is just like murder capital of the United States.
Just
Sleepy
drenched
fishing
in
town
murder.
on the Maine coast.
I wanted.
That's kind of Quetzal knowing Nucor, the girl who lives in an attic that's full of like griffin crap or whatever the hell is up there.
Well, but a girl whose birth has a paper trail.
Yeah.
Like,
It has a paper
I
trail.
assume that's how Quetzal knows about.
Daughter of an incredibly influential person in town. It does make sense. I reduced in a silly way for fun, but she does live in an attic full of
Shit.
crap. Maybe probably her own, but maybe who else lives up there?
The cats.
Oh,
Her
the cats. It's full of cat shit. Oh, she's me.
she only leaves in her imagination.
Okay, so now we're back into the tunnels.
Yeah, now we're in the tunnels.
The tunnies.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to say my thing I was so proud of that I sent an email after last session of the little pantheon down in the tunnel and how it's very biblical. How we have a soldier, a thief, a prostitute, corrupt clergyman. These are all characters from the New Testament.
Yeah.
And they weirdly
balance.
Yeah, they all weirdly balance each other. Like there's the thief that's secretly religious and the clergyman who's secretly a black magician. And then there's the soldier who kills people and the fisherman who feeds people.
And there's the prostitute who's a soldier.
Yeah. And
the soldier is also secretly a philosopher.
Yeah.
And the fisherman is just a simple man.
You know, and the prostitute is naked and female and thus like needs to be protected by these people, but she's also been possessed by a goddess, has a bazooka, and is taller than everyone else. So it's like there's like this weird contradiction between who's leading who's protecting who.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes me, I'm trying to keep making notes of myself of like, anytime you have a collection of characters that are together for a while, I feel like in this book, they're a pantheon and they can be broken down into some combination of different energies that WOLFE needs to talk to each other.
It's fun to do that in any book.
Yeah.
And the only one who can see is an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oreb kind of has Quetzal-like powers to understand what the hell is going on at all times. But he can't tell you because he only's got 2 words at a time.
Which is sort of the same situation as the Flyer. The Flyer couldn't really explain to anybody exactly what's going on because they have this technical understanding.
Right. It's similar to when Echidna is trying to use Marble's brain to tell humans something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Flyer is a real wild character.
Mm-hmm.
Flyers are cool.
Okay, so down here, they get attacked. That happens now, right? That didn't already happen? Or we're not cutting into the attack.
They might squabble amongst themselves a little bit. But no, that's pretty much where the attack is. Yeah.
They're ambushed by Urus and Galata and their gang.
Mm-hmm.
And Hammerstone and Incus kill most of them. But then there's like this big Ock business that happens where Ock insists on going back to get Dace's body and has to go through like a real ordeal to get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's hallucinating.
Yeah. Wait, is that next? Is this just the prelude to that? And that? No, that is this chapter. He goes to get. I'm getting 3 and 4 squishy in my head, but this is the one where he kills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is where he kills Urus. That is, that's a really, as much as my memory of this book is that the tunnels part are all dark and way long and bleed together and confusing. Like this is just a straight up really clear, cool, dramatic scene in the tunnels that kind of I liked better this time around. Oh, and there's one of the things that I underlined here before we get to the murder is when Ock thinks if Incus had been killed, Ock, would have gotten his Needler back. But what might Hammerstone have done? I thought that was interesting. Like, I feel like there's a whole discussion to spin out of just that phrase, but Wolf just drops it and goes.
Wait, I'm sorry. I kind of missed you. Like, kind of lost track. Ryan, could you repeat that?
Okay,
Maybe,
so it's in this part where he's like talking about it's when Ock's talking to it's like right when he's about to leave, and he's thinking he finds the like pile of stuff, the bludgeon made out of a bone, and he says if Incus had been killed, like he's like, oh, this guy got really close to killing Incus, and he said if Incus had been killed, Ock would have gotten his Needler back. But what might Hammerstone have done? Which is like a really insightful view of revolution. Like, okay, there's this bad guy in charge. I really wanted him to die, but now that I think about it, it could have been more of a problem if he just died right now. Like, what would the military man have done?
Well, then a military who like is like, what will Lenny do when you kill George, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Like the reality of the situation isn't just that you can kill your oppressor and then you're free. But like you have to think of it more like Ock, the giant galoot criminal, is like instinctually recognizing here, like you can't just use brute force to remove your oppressor. There's more to it than that. You might cause a bigger problem by just braining, or even just like the accidental braining of your oppressor might end up putting you in a harder situation if you're not prepared.
Really ambitious writing with the whole tunnel section here. Just going back to the amount of characters in the scene, it's really tough to pull off in like a story like this. You know, like there's like 8-ish people, and they're all developing. You know, like
having all of that happen in a chapter too is so wild. Like.
Yeah,
I feel like so often you see, like I'm reading another like a different fantasy novel now, and it has like separate chapters for POV characters.
Yeah,
which definitely like keeps things a little more organized and distinct. But like having one chapter that follows at least 3 different plot threads at once, but them still have like it's still really working.
Well, I think also that's why this is part of how the tunnels get so confusing on the first read.
I think it's
like,
exactly
who's this? Who's that? Now there's 4 new people, and I can't see them because it's dark. Like, what the hell? Like, but now that you go back and you're like, I know who all these people are.
Right. It's a little bit overwhelming at first.
You have to imagine it like an episode of Frasier. Kind of.
It does feel a lot more like TV. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that's part of why we only can get through one chapter per session on this book, is because each chapter is really like an episode of TV where you're like cutting back and forth and you're getting major development.
Most scenes in TV, though, like for example, or even film or even books, right? In general, like it's going to be really hard to have more than 4 characters in a scene where each of them are like doing stuff. Like it really takes a lot of care to like weave that all together from like a writing perspective, to have like 4 different people doing stuff. That's why most scenes in general have two people. That's a scene, 2 people talking, 2 people doing something together. Like, like characters cut off into 2s, like, and go about their ways and their stories interweave. Having like this many characters of this scene, I'm just noting it just from a purely I'm just fascinated by the writing of it, and it's really interesting when Auk is like kind of slowly like losing his touch on reality. And I kind of brought this up last time, where we get those paragraphs where it's just like describing what each of the characters are doing. I mean, it's really wild, and it's so much to keep track of. Like this person's voice, this person's saying, and it's like zigzagging back and forth, like ping ponging all over the place. It's a lot. Like I actually kind of want to make like a chart of this whole like underground scene eventually at some point, that just like charts the growth of the characters and the conflicts between all the characters. What if we
did a what if we did a reading and we each had a character?
That would be sick.
And then maybe we could visualize it better. And that reminds me that I was thinking about, this is like, I'm sorry if this is like a huge tangent, but I was thinking about eschatology and Genesis. And
not that big of a tangent.
At this point, maybe not at this point, maybe later, but it might be interesting after having gotten further into this thing to go back and read it again.
Mm-hmm.
See if there's any kind of like connections or foreshadowing. Maybe not foreshadowing, but like, you know what I mean. See if it like having read more sheds more light on it or something.
Isn't there a character in eschatology in Genesis named Jahi?
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Which is an interesting reuse of a name.
Maybe it wouldn't be good to use it to read it yet then. But who cares?
I do think that play is everywhere in all of these.
Yeah, we should do it at the end of Long Sun and then again at the end of Short Sun. Or near the end of Long Sun and near the end of Short Sun. Okay, so the real line is, she's dead, you too.
Yeah, right.
So good. But 100% Arnold. And it's sort of the thieves can't too. I feel like it's a kind of approximation of the weird way that, I mean, Arnold's weird way of talking is part of the package, and so I feel like that's how it gets into Auk, is that he's going to use all this weird slang. So you understand him, but it's not talking right.
I thought of the stabbing moment earlier today when we were talking about I think this was your idea, Connor, there's no right or something like that. And
yeah.
I feel like this situation here, we get to see like Auk, like talking this guy down, like maybe he's planning on murdering him, maybe not. Like we don't exactly see deep into Auk's motivation here. But he does kill him, and Chenille's like upset, and he like, Auk just acted, just did that.
It's a weird explanation of it to Chenille.
Morally chewy moment.
It seems like he tells Chenille, you guys should tell me if I'm totally misreading this. It seems like he tells her, I had to kill him because if I didn't, when we got out of here, other people would do something worse to him. Like, because he crossed me and I'm going to get them all out of here. It's very kind of strange excuse. And then like a hyena laughs in the middle of it, which makes me think that's WOLFE saying that Auk's deluded. That Auk's like coming up with this reason, but it's not the reason he killed Uruz.
Yeah. Right.
Like, yeah, I had to, and I did it. You would have too in my shoes, which I don't think Chenille is basically saying I definitely wouldn't have in your shoes.
Right.
I'm having an odd tangential thought about Auk right now, going back to when Silk says he looks like he has a dog's head, so his name must have originally been something else. I'm wondering if it was Wolf, and that Gene Wolfe identifies as Auk most in this story.
I guess that I feel like would go some way to explaining Auk's weird perception of Chenille.
Mm-hmm.
Like in this business, there's this weird, she comes up next to him and he smells her vagina. Like it's just said. Like, and I feel like that sort of weirdly resonates, I feel like, with Severian's attitude too, where there's like this this wise person who has this gigantic blind spot when it comes to interacting with women kind of lapses into these weird, like, instinctual reactions, sort of overcome by them.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I feel like Ock's sexuality and what I project onto WOLFE from New Sun, they do kind of seem to hang together.
Calls her Jugs. That's his
Yeah.
name for her.
It's
Two
totally
other people.
ridiculous.
He refers to her as that when he's talking to someone else who doesn't
Yeah,
know
where's
that.
Jugs?
Yeah.
Jugs,
But
you in
everybody-
this?
People would know. Like, everyone would know who he meant.
Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
Crazier. That's like, that doesn't make it normal and okay.
I just watched the going through Terrace House again and got to the episode where Mayu shows up last night.
Mayu.
God.
Jugs of Terrace House.
Did they show the part where two of them are looking at her Instagram page and they like pinch her boob picture to make it seem like it was bouncing?
Yes, it was one of the funniest parts of that season.
So funny.
Sean's faces when he's like, it's like a weird, totally unguarded, I feel like, moment of like Ock-like sexuality, of just like he's overcome by happiness because he's around a large-breasted woman.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very, very strange. In retrospect, and that with him getting arrested for weed in Japan, in retrospect, it's like, what was Tsubasa doing with that guy? Come on, man. You know what I mean?
I mean, he's a 6'2" model.
Yeah, he's really cute and he likes her. But
He was sweet. He's like a sweetheart.
They were
Yes.
sweet. They were the cute couple of that season, although
also,
not the
like,
successful one.
When he hangs out with Umi and when he hangs out with Mayu for the first time, he also isn't creepy at all. And I feel like that's
True.
instantly like makes him a different caliber of dude. Like
he's just a dude. Like that's very true. Like you're allowed to be gross. Everyone's allowed to be gross a little bit.
yeah. But like when he's with, I mean, like he could easily, I mean, he's like tall and half Japanese. He has all the power to be creepy if he wants to, and he doesn't do it. And I feel like that makes people fall in love with him instantly. They're like, this guy is not abusing his power at all. What a sweetheart.
That's true. You're very right.
He's so freaking handsome, though. It's like,
He's very handsome.
it's really hard to deal with sometimes. It's just how cute Sean is.
It's effed up.
It's like I want to be him.
He was
I'm a
just-
little mad at him for being
Like he's
real.
he was genetically modified, like literally. Like he maybe could potentially be a result of some kind of eugenics that's going on that we don't know about.
I think he could do a good job playing Silk.
Playing
He's playing Silk. Yeah,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
tall, he's sweet, he's like,
I
It
could
would-
see that.
he's got
Let's
a
do it.
magnetism.
Let's do it.
Maybe not that smart.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's buy the rights. let's just do it.
Did
Oh
you
man,
know?
can we talk about Caleb's April Fool's joke?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, look, I knew it was Caleb and Twig like live for April Fool's Day. It's like the day that they are both like their true selves. And anything Caleb tells me on April Fool's Day, I just know. Like if I get a text from him and it's on that day, I know that it's gonna be that.
It was a very good joke. We
It
should
was.
explain it.
I know I might
video.
have ruined it, but because I was just like, no,
Absolutely not.
yeah. I'm not even gonna look this up because I'm assuming that this is a joke.
Well, just to share with the internet, the joke was that Brian
Wolf.
Herbert and who else had like secured the rights to
The granddaughter of Gene Wolfe. I don't know
Yeah,
if he has
Gene-
one named Becca Wolfe or something
Yeah,
like that.
Becca
It's pretty
Wolfe.
funny.
and they were going to write a prequel trilogy based on Gene's notes.
It's really fun
And he
to
said
think
sounds bad, which that really sold it for me. It was when Caleb said, I don't know, this sounds bad. I don't it's like shit.
It's
wouldn't
really
make any
fun to
sense.
think about a bastardization of these books because it's not obvious how you would do it. It would be funny. I feel like any way it turned out would be kind of surprising and funny.
I have no idea what that would even be like. Yeah, I feel like it would have to be completely different ultimately. Like if they're trying to make a prequel trilogy to this kind of, it'll be like what well, like the story of like Severian's parents or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, the Catherine Chronicles.
The Catherine
With like
Chronicles.
really strange concrete explanations of certain things that are vague throughout the rest of the series
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of
I'm
just
sure it would
drop
Fill
out
in
of the
the
sky.
gaps.
gaps.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
especially
Catherine can
on-
exist at
and then
any
you go,
point in
well, then
time.
if you're Brian Herbert, you got to plant a bunch of new characters so that inside of that, so that you can do like more of your own bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. I guess if I don't know. I guess if you were writing a story based on Gene's notes, you probably would. I guess I don't know what Gene's notes for these books would have been like, but I feel like a lot of things that are probably were in his notes were not explicit in the final text. So there's probably a lot of stuff that Gene had worked out, but that he's not just out and out saying in any of these books. And so, like a prequel based on Gene's notes, I feel like they would end up taking it very like literally, of like, oh, this is the information that we need to convey clearly to the reader, and not just that it needs to be like loose Catholic jazz.
Catholic jazz.
I was thinking about like this sort of like Catholicism, Protestantism tension in Chapter 4 in particular, as Quetzal sort of revealing the like the death of Pas and like the sort of superficiality of the deities that they have, and I don't know. Sometimes it does feel like it's a story about leaning away from Catholicism.
Yeah. There's totally a Protestantism to this.
I know it's something that we've talked about before, but I really felt it in this chapter.
Well, it says, I mean, Protestantism demystifies Catholicism, and Silk's going deeper into mysticism.
But he's also a simple man who's there for his community in a very New England Protestant feeling kind of way.
Well, and he has this like direct, he ends up sort of directly interfacing with these deities in a way that the sort of like the power structure of this faith does not really want.
There's a Pentecostal nature to the Protestantism in this book, I think. That they're being overtaken, they're being possessed, and speaking in tongues if you're a computer.
Yeah, though in this case we also see like the existing religious power structure sort of manipulating Silk in this. I don't know. It's interesting. Like what would have happened if the Catholics had figured out how to manipulate Martin Luther or something.
Yeah.
Like it to like incorporate the kinds of experiences or ideas that he was having back into it instead of it being like a schism.
Well, so our Protestantism was against the backdrop of the Renaissance, and the world is kind of going through the opposite of the Renaissance.
Right.
And so here's an interesting thing. When I was hanging out with those psychotic Catholics and those hip young scientists from DC were coming up to also join up with Catholicism, I was like, what's your angle here? Why are you doing this? They said, we're scientists and we always assume that we're atheists, but now that all of the institutions that our society has been built upon are crumbling, we're going to turn to this as scientists because it's existed for 2,000 years. So we want to figure out how that happened because we need that. So when the world is ending, if your Protestant Reformation doesn't happen until the world is ending, it's going to get in bed with the established religion a little bit more potentially, or the established religion is going to have finger holds in it easier.
I feel like this leads directly into this concept of God as an author. Is that like part of the reason why religion persists while science continually falls away and replaces itself and overturns itself and stuff is that imagination is a higher form of thinking than logic, and not like the weird toy you play with when you're done your logical work. Right. But it's harder and more insightful, and that we prize logic because it's easier to control and master, and we're trying to like push out imagination from being necessary for us to like really come to terms with. But
imagination is truly creative, whereas logic is just rearranging facts.
Yeah,
like it's not creating anything.
Yeah, and I feel like that I think is a big part of the secret they're looking for. Is like, why does religion persist? Is that it correctly values imagination as something integral to the survival of human beings and to like a well-functioning society.
Imagination is the only way that you can tap into time. You know, I've been reading a lot about archaeology that's going on right now, and like the logic of archaeology, the rearranging of the facts can't tell you anything except what's right here. You then have to imagine in order to put together what happened, like how these facts got here. Like all time is imaginary. You can only physically experience the present.
Root this back into the world of the world. Like it's interesting that Paz seeks to harness the instinct for religion, you know, that imaginative quality for his own purposes. And yet, you know, just like life bursting forth in Jurassic Park, you know, like the true like religious you know, like power like comes to Silk. You know, that divine inspiration, that like connection with something larger, like outside of even outside of the conception of God, you know.
It gets into the whole Greek thing nicely, because for the Greeks, the gods were still beholden to the Morai, you know, like the gods have fates too. Zeus marries and then gets rid of several wives because he keeps getting prophecies that a wife with that kid is going to be better than him. You know, like the gods are not all powerful in original mythology, and neither are they here. When you try to be the master of the myth, you are being mastered by the myth, inevitably. Because imagination is larger and more real than your conception of yourself. All you are is your thought of yourself, but imagination is bigger than that, I think.
Yeah. And
so it's smaller than whatever is real.
Hubris comes from thinking that you're not imagining when you're imagining, that like you're seeing, like you know, without imagination equals seeing clearly, is like a reliance on yourself and pulling all the whole universe into your own head.
Right. The original sin.
Yeah. So we have a huge issue clearly with that going on in our culture right now, where there's the like absolute clarity about what's true and this intense drive to eradicate that which is like inimical to our clarity.
Right. Yeah. The things that aren't true are also God. Yeah.
And Silk says explicitly in chapter 4 that the outsider is kind of like the juggalo god. Is that like all outcasts belong to you? And which I think kind of leads into feeds into what you were saying, Tim, about like life finds a way. Is that like the God who catches the runoff always can come back in, can become relevant again when the good things are running off or when everything's running off.
Which is kind of built into the people of the book as well. I think that Yahweh is in many ways a God of outcasts, especially in Genesis. Like, he's the pastoral God. God is a shepherd, and the shepherds are the people who live out in the hills and have sex with sheep. Like they are, the prophets are always out in the wilderness and going insane and then coming back, and their insanity is their wisdom. I think that Gene Wolfe's God is also a God of outsiders in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, like you said, Jesus collects up the people that everyone hates, tax collectors and what have
Midgets.
you. Like the people that that everybody expects that he would be saying are sinners. He's like, and that's the ones that I love. Like that's kind of supposed to be the central tenet of all of those. I know less about Islam, but the other big two.
I think that Gene Wolfe also associates God with outer space, which is very interesting because that kind of goes back to that imaginative threshold too, like what, for human beings, you have to think about outer space, in order to connect with your imagination, in order to connect with the spiritual, like you have to try to conceive of whatever that mystery is, like out there. And I feel like Wolfe tries to do that, and he literally makes the outsider just representative of whatever's outside the world. So it's kind of interesting. And I feel like what makes Wolfe like a sci-fi writer, what like this is clearly it's science fiction, but I think it's that fascination with the outer space and the edges of outer space and like trying to shade in the mysteries of outer space that specifically makes Wolfe still a science fiction writer.
Like part of his thesis is that like science doesn't like dispel mystery, it extends it.
Right.
It gives us like more ability to imagine like the mystery, and gives us roads like that lead to more mystery.
The original point of science was to describe God.
Yeah. And most scientists, most good ones now would probably still say something like that, right? Or at least like the pretentious ones, where like the astrophysicists.
There's one of the original Egyptian goddesses. I get the sense that Gene Wolfe would be really into this woman called Knife, who they imported from Libya, and she's like at first blush she's a sky goddess. She's a goddess of the sky, but when you dig deeper into it, like because she came from Libya, she was over the horizon, so she was the goddess of the sky that's beyond the horizon. But then eventually you start to realize, oh, this is the goddess of the unimaginable. This is the goddess of the part of the world we can't see. But also is the goddess of the sky. So outer space, she's the goddess of all the stars that are, the immobile stars. And I feel like when you get to the mermaid goddess who's swimming through space, I'm like, oh, this is totally Knife, as representing the ineffability of God, that we cannot imagine what God is because it's everything that we can imagine and then more. God. He's coming. It's coming.
It's very interesting to me to think of the conception of outer space changing from one of like this world of harmony and song to one of vacuum and silence in the modern times. And I feel like this is like a real psychological manifestation of modern psyche.
Well, so there's been a lot of stuff. I don't know if it's actual science work that's been done lately, but science journalism right now, at least in my bubble, has been pushing all this stuff about how space is not quiet. Like that idea that we got from Alien isn't like it's you can't hear with your ears, but like it's noisy as shit in other ways, like radio and stuff like that. That like
There's a lot of stuff
all
going
sorts
on.
of clickbaity articles about listen to this star scream and things like that. The sound of the moon and whatnot. Like this is what our planets sound like as they push against the solar wind. It creates a sound-like thing. So I feel like whatever the facts are and whatever truth is, there's an element of science right now that is
Coming
turning
back.
away. Yeah, which is weird. So weird.
Well, it fits exactly with your talk about those guys in DC who are like, we see the way the wind's blowing. We need to like bring in some of the old stuff that worked again.
Yeah.
Because this is, look at where we're going.
A weird fantasy I've been having is the ether. You know how we don't believe in the ether just because Einstein was like, well, if we can't detect it and it has no effect on us, that's the same thing as not existing, which isn't like a hard disproval. So what if at one point we discover, oh no, there is ether? Like space is full of this substance. And I mean, that's kind of quantum fields to a degree, except that's pre-space and matter. But I don't know.
Well, it's such a weird formulation to be like, if we can't detect it and it has no effect on us, then it basically doesn't exist. But that assumes that we are able to identify everything that has an effect on us, which is just clearly, from the individual's point of view, not true. No one's individual experience is that they can detect all of the things that motivate them.
But it's interesting, like if you look at Einstein from a philosophical standpoint, his whole thing was subjectivity, that reality is by nature subjective, and like from that standpoint, right, exactly. And from that standpoint, he can say, well, like if it doesn't, and that's what it's all about. Like it's all, the speed of light is all about things that have happened. If something happened far enough away that the light, it would take longer for the light to reach you than the universe has existed, that didn't happen in your world. You know, like the galaxy, and then these weird time things happen because space is expanding fast enough that some of the light that we're getting came from a star that exists beyond the event horizon that we have now. So the light is older than the universe and comes from a thing that doesn't exist. It's time's real weird, guys, and relativity is real weird.
Yeah. And the engineers like WOLFE, I feel like, sit on that end of science going like, what the fuck? We've got these holes in this like weird shit to deal with. Whereas like the layman, the person who has the sign in their yard that says, in this house we believe in science, sits on the other end, which goes, they got it all figured out. Thank God. Phew.
Yeah. Yeah, those signs are chilling because science isn't a thing that you believe in. It's a thing that you do. And you're not doing it. I'm not doing it. We don't do it. But just believing in it is a religion. And a religion that thinks it's not a religion is really scary.
It's possessed.
It's fundamentalism.
Yeah, a person who doesn't recognize that they're having religious, zealous, like activity going on is possessed.
And this happens. This keeps happening again and again in our culture. I feel like where the left see that the right is being successful, so they start using right tactics. But that means they just are the right. They're possessed by the right. You know, like cancel culture was invented by the right, and it possessed the left. And you see the same thing here with science people are upset that fundamentalist Christians are gaining traction, so they start being fundamentalist scientists.
Mhm. I mean, and it's power that does this, and that's why it can bounce back from any ideology to any ideology, no matter how opposed they seem to be. Is that once you cross over from being the underdog to the one in power, you're not just a more powerful version of the underdog. You're now you're the thing that is power.
Yeah.
It's real. I mean, we've seen, it's like we've been very privileged in the last couple of years to see like such a turn in the power dynamics between left and right, that it is, I feel like it really lays bare the nature of power to us in a way that could only be glimpsed in novels and histories before.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I follow exactly, but do you mean that the right has more power?
No, I mean that like that the left is no longer the underdog anymore. That like extreme progressive ideas are now supported by the CIA, the White House, every major corporation, every branch of the military are now on like the vanguard of leftist ideas, which is...
You mean liberal ideas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I could not say that it's left.
Well, I mean,
relatively like left to what they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, regardless of like the labels, we're just talking about the political spectrum. Liberals are on the left side.
Clear. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think liberals are centrist. Personally.
Liberals are centrist, like at best. They're really center.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's if you look at it up close, that is the case. But I feel like if you're looking at the scope of like politics of the last 100 years
in America.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're talking about is how the liberals became centrist. Like they're centrist because they're using fascist, you can't talk about that tactics. And that makes them right. It draws them rightwards.
I don't think that's the thing that's drawing them rightwards.
The idea that liberalism is left is like propaganda. Like, I don't think it's true. You know,
there
it's
is no
not
mainstream
true.
leftism in America.
Not even a little bit.
There just isn't.
I think if someone
we're talking about this from being inside of a tragedy, but if we step back and look at it as just like this is a spectrum, these people are to the left of where these people are on this imaginary spectrum. I mean, you have people who are, regardless of how much spectrum there is beyond these people, there's one that we can identify as being here and one that we can identify as being here.
Yeah.
And that's
not
all we're
necessarily.
saying.
I don't know.
They're very close together. I understand that. But and like what we're talking about is how these people think they're over here, but because of how they behave, they're actually really close to the other people.
Yeah, we talk about the truth versus fact, or we've spent a lot of time talking about that in the past. And I think this is a matter of like, there is the way that things are on paper if you were to subscribe them to somebody on the outside. And then there is the way that the people on the inside perceive it. And what Connor's talking about is the way that people perceive it. And that's just as important. And I actually think it might be more important than the way things actually are. But you need both to see each other. And then there's the ones that are actually real, which we can't even see. And then there's the other thing. You know what I mean? Like there's too many. The amount.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that like there's no world in which like the statement that the like military and the CIA are like leftist is like a statement that I can kind
I don't think that's true.
I mean, but their PR arm is, I'm not saying that they have, I mean, of course they haven't had like a change of heart, but their propaganda is now designed around leftist as far as mainstream culture is concerned.
I didn't realize that's what you meant. I thought you meant I thought what you were saying was that they were trying to like instate a leftist program. But if you're just saying that they're like using leftist language, then
co-option of language is a very
agree with
different
you about
thing.
that.
Yeah, well, it's co-option of language that I feel like has been successful in that
Yeah.
people on the ground who are now very loyal to the FBI and the military consider themselves left.
I totally
Like
misunderstood.
the
If
war,
that's
it's
what
like
you were saying,
the
I
war in
misunderstood.
Ukraine is like a woke war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
it's
yeah.
oh yeah, we're
And
good.
yet
Yeah,
that's
it's
so
all about
racist.
human rights. But I mean,
Right.
but to that end though, the U.S. military and the CIA and shit has been saying that that everything they do has to do with human rights since for 50 years. or
Wild.
whatever.
Yeah.
I'm having deja vu, everybody. I'm having deja vu.
That rules. Oh, speaking
Thank
of
you.
which,
Is it because we get into the same conversation every time?
Very
Yeah.
well could be,
Which,
except that I
um,
remember saying that I had deja vu.
about
Nice.
an hour ago, Rose texted me and she said, the one time that I tune into Wolfpack is when my name comes up.
Whoa.
It means she's on the right track.
Yeah.
But I think just to go back to something Ryan said, I think both parties operate under the assumption that both parties only make sense if they're the underdog. With
Yeah.
Mhm.
both of them are like that. Both of them need to be the underdog, and all their narratives are being the underdog. And
That's what it works for everybody because
it works
it's
for
like
everyone.
because it's like it only ever has to do with beating the other guy. It has nothing to do with doing anything.
But that's why
Well,
it's a
also-
fundamentally conservative position. Like that if both sides are dedicated to nothing happening, then
Exactly.
that's
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
conservative.
That at the end of the day, even if you are identifying as a leftist, if you do what rightists do, you're rightist.
Yes.
And if at the end of the day, if you believe in science, because science is not a thing you believe in, it's a thing you do, science is your religion.
Religious.
You're
Yeah.
practicing a religion, not science.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we would all agree about that. That's
Yeah.
pretty
And it's something that our
uncontroversial
culture is obsessed
Wolfpack
with.
take.
Yeah, but
It's
it's just
way
amazing
more-
how all elements of our culture are doing that. Nerds are jocks. It just happens again and again and again.
The squares are the freaks.
Yeah, totally. Normcore.
Well,
That's
that's
what I
the-
always say.
The power of myth, and how powerful just saying what something is, how that's so more powerful in a certain sense, in an overall mass sense than what something actually is.
yeah. I mean, that's Nietzschean, right?
Something can just be fully just being in the full light of day. This is the thing that happened and everybody watched it. I'm sorry that I have to mention Will Smith again, but this is a thing where we all watched something. Yeah, it was weird. It's weird for that to happen on the Oscars. But if we actually, one thing I noted is that so few people actually talked about Chris Rock. Because if they talked about Chris Rock, they would have to talk about how he laughed about it and he doesn't give a shit and how he's not pressing charges and how he's not even really talking about it, I think. And they would have to accept that it's not a big deal.
Well, I don't think it's only
benefit.
that though, because I actually think if you want to get into, and I don't give a fuck about this story at all, but as long as we're going to talk about it, it's I think him laughing it off and not pressing charges is part of the same disgusting machismo shit as Will Smith going up and being don't say some shit about my wife, because it has to do with being because if you if somebody hits you and you complain about it and you try to call in tattle on them, it's also you being a pussy or whatever.
Right.
Right, so-
I don't think it is actually that he. Well, and the other part of it is the thing we already discussed about all news being good news. They're all and
Right.
it's not him not seeing stars, him seeing dollar signs or whatever. It's ultimately it's gonna be good for him that happened. So he's not,
Wouldn't
But
be
it's
as good if
funny.
he pressed
But
charges, though.
I don't think that him laughing it off and not pressing charges means that it's not a big deal to him. I don't think that that's true.
It's
Okay,
an investment in his victim.
That's true. But I just mean, like, there's a sense of scale, and it's not like he didn't, like, get jumped.
Yeah, but when you say there's a sense of scale, you're like kind of completely ignoring the setting where this was something that is televised to the whole world. There's not really a bigger scale of like event when you've got the most famous people in America like doing their
just
number
because
one
it's
celebration.
Not only are they the most famous people, but also they're the people who want nothing more than to project the image that they are like literally the most civilized people who exist, like the most enlightened and civilized, like contingent of society.
That's why people are really
I think
mad.
why the thing is such a scandal is because you're like, you can't, okay, you're gonna like lecture about like Trump and like Mitch McConnell and all that, you know, you're gonna be these kind of like heavy-handed like nanny figures that like it's the whole thing about like why they always get made fun of on like Fox News or whatever, because you are that, and then you're gonna be like slapping each other on TV like looking like fucking idiots.
You're hitting on the thing that I think is the important thing about this, which is that in that moment the veil of them being better than everybody else was ripped away. And that's why celebrities are upset about it. That's why the Academy is mad, is because, like, so I really
It broke kayfabe.
Well, but it's still kayfabe.
Oscars is a night of people eating shit. Just all these people eating shit all night.
So like in a way they broke kayfabe, but it's still kayfabe. Like whether or not
meta kayfabe.
Well, yeah, whether or not like the slap was like the slight was real and the slap was real or whatever, which like I think it actually happened, but like they're still working it. Like it's still like still a, like just seeing like how it got edited. I mean, like Will Smith laughed at this joke and then he goes and slaps and then it's like then he stays and wins an Academy Award. Like the whole thing is like
you can't get out of the narrative.
Like they're working.
Narrative. It's every 100% of your entire life is the narrative, just like all of us, but not everybody sees ours.
They found a way to make, and whether they meant to or not, they found a way to make the Oscars more interesting and relevant to like a modern cultural conversation than it has been in like a decade at least.
Yeah, but I also kind of think that's drawing the eye of the giant. You know, like I people are not applauding the Oscars for what they've done here at all. I feel like people were like, why the fuck do we even have the Oscars? And now they're like, oh, we shouldn't have the Oscars.
They are not as good at booking pro wrestling as pro wrestling promotions are. Like it's too ambiguous. Like the face and heel in this situation is too ambiguous, and they did not work it out in such a way that like,
which makes sense if there's a pro-war angle. Like the ambiguousness it maps exactly onto the United States government's like.
I think you're reading a lot into it with this war, the war part of it.
I'm hip to it. I love this.
But you have to remember that Hollywood's entire scam is conveying the idea that when they put on and this is also infotainment's like scam, is that when they put on their makeup, when they get the lighting just right, when they edit together these things, that what we're seeing is a representative of something that could just happen. That like Will Smith is slapping Chris Rock is just like some other guy getting slapped by some other guy in our world, but it's not. Every angle of it is stage managed.
I mean, it's so artificial to begin with. Like it's a hacky joke. It's like the outrage seemed manufactured. Like he talks later, like basically saying sorry. You know, like I was playing a character essentially. Like it's wrestling.
I can't believe that. I cannot believe that's what he's saying. I mean,
you gotta say something.
The funniest thing about the whole phenomenon, like just being on the internet for it, is that like there's this like total hand-wringing side of like normal people Twitter where they're like, oh my god, like this is a huge problem, and wrestling Twitter is like, this is hilarious. Like it's absurd to think anything more about this than it just being a fucking work. Like that's just what it is. And like you see right through the artifice of all of it. But then there's this other side that's really committed to the artifice of it and upholding that, and then finding a thing to point at as being a problem. But yeah, it's all bullshit. Like it doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
So wrestling is realer than real life.
Everything's realer than real life, man. All this imagination is really real.
It was weird. What were we talking about before that? Oh,
the Book of the Long Sun.
Liberals and conservatives.
Yeah.
Oh yes, the
old chestnut.
Well, who cares?
Chris Rock not pressing charges is a conservative anti-government act.
Well, Chris Rock is a very smart man who's very thoughtful.
He's just being smart.
I mean, not wanting to send a black man to jail, I think, is not necessarily a conservative act.
He knows
going to have some kind of there will be some kind of interaction, two of them.
He doesn't trust the system to be able to mete out justice, which is conservative.
Who knows why? I don't.
He's gonna mete out justice his own way by telling jokes about it in a year. That's the superhero mythos that the conservative people are all over. It's Chris Rock is Cliven Bundy.
Wow.
Cliven Bundy?
The guy who
I don't know
put
about
his cows. I know it's a stretch, but I'm going to stretch all the way. I got long arms.
Yeah.
Oh, is he the
rancher?
The cowman who was grazing his cows on government land, and then his kid took over fishing license office or something.
Yeah. They were Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Oregon militiamen.
Where they have nutters.
See, I don't think Chris Rock, all he's done is wait. He's waiting to do what we haven't seen what his reaction is. And I agree with you, Connor. He's going to do a really good, devastating comedy about it. I feel like it'll be kind of like James Acaster's whole bit about Mr. Bean.
Gervais. Oh,
Mr. Bean.
where he don't know the Mr. Bean routine.
You haven't seen the Mr. Bean James Acaster? Oh, you will love this. You really have to watch the most recent Cold Lasagna Hate Myself 1989 or whatever it's called.
I haven't. I've only been able to find clips from it.
Oh, Well, I'm trying to remember where I watched it. But James Acaster is just only getting more and more powerful. And I feel
James Acaster is an amazing thinker.
Yeah. And this comedy set, the newest one, is like he got dumped for Mr. Bean over a year ago and hasn't said a thing about it in public until he put together a really, really well-crafted, beautiful show that isn't.
What do you mean, like a redux of Mr. Bean?
No,
like would they redo it with him or something?
No, it's a stand-up act about him, about this thing that really happened in his life where his girlfriend left him to be with Rowan Atkinson.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
He got dumped for Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
Not a metaphor.
Yeah. And he didn't tell a single joke about it until like over a year later. He let everything like run its course. Yeah. And then he has the last word by making this amazingly good stand-up that revolves around this event that happened to him. Oh. And I think Chris Rock's going to do the same thing because Chris Rock is like a craftsman. Like he doesn't. Yeah. He works on his shit and then gives you a perfect workshopped version at the end.
Yes. And that's what I want to say is that Chris Rock tells funny jokes. And that was the stupidest joke. And there's no way he wrote that joke. And
he came up with it on the spot.
He apparently didn't know about the alopecia at all, he says. He doesn't look at Jada Pinkett's Instagram, so he didn't know about the alopecia. He just saw the hair and was like,
okay, up. Like it.
And he's an old ass man too, so G.I. Jane is like still within relevant year.
There's no who.
It's a dad. It's a dad joke.
It's a dad joke.
It is a dad joke, and he is a fucking dad.
I really liked that the day after Seth Meyers on his late night show before he did his monologue said, it's really scary to do this knowing that you can get slapped for a bad joke. And then he just said, because all of his jokes are very bad. So that's the whole thing is that his jokes are awful.
A lot of jokes have to be bad. If you tell good, your monologue That's the whole point of the monologue, is that it's bad jokes, right?
Yeah, he does horrible impressions. Like
That was-
the
no,
whole thing is
Letterman
that his
did
Al
that.
Pacino. I mean, and Seth Meyers is now doing Letterman's show. He's in Letterman's slot, and he's spiritually continuing on what Letterman did. Like that is an
No way.
acknowledged thing.
Totally different shows.
I mean, it's Seth Meyers' version of it, but it's still, this show is falling apart as I'm doing it, and that's what's funny.
Oh, okay. I actually haven't watched Seth Meyers in a long time. It's still in
rough.
the same time slot, though, right?
It's David Letterman's time slot.
Oh, it is
man,
11:30.
Right.
I know.
What? So he's got the Late Late Show, right? The Conan, like Letterman, then Conan, then.
Oh, is he on Conan? On Conan's time slot? I thought he was on Letterman's time slot.
No,
Well,
I
they
think
were
he's on
both the
Letterman's
same.
original time slot.
I think it
when
goes-
Letterman
I think it
did
goes
the Late Late Show.
11:30 to 12:30 is Jimmy Fallon, right? And then
12:30.
Right, which is where
12:30.
Letterman started.
Yes.
Right, that's where
And
he
where
started.
Conan started too.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
later,
they both-
it's like this zone of like, what am I
Yeah.
watching here? Like,
The
I-
best television.
I
Yeah.
used to watch some of his YouTube clips because I was going through like a stressed out politics phase. And then I had to stop watching it because you can just he's just reading cue cards as fast as he possibly can.
Mhm.
And there's
Yeah.
it's like he's never seen it before. And
He's
he's
not
just
good.
reading words.
is this Seth
Yeah.
Meyers you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Seth
Yeah.
Meyers. It's like
Okay.
it's like he's just reading words off of cue cards, and it's like there's almost like no content.
The cue
behind it.
card guy is now the most popular character on Seth Meyers' show.
Sure.
Meta.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's changed recently. I just remember it being like kind of John Oliver light and like really softball interviews. Like,
Yeah,
And it
really,
turned an amazing corner during pandemic.
that's cool.
Like the best part of Seth Meyers' show is the YouTube exclusive content where he just addresses everybody's comments on the YouTube clips of his shows,
That's
where
cool.
they're like, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, corrections. He just talks to them, and that's the best part. Because it's
See,
also
I-
the only people in the audience are his writers. So it's just him talking
Right.
directly to his writers and making fun of that. You just watch this
See,
relationship of a boss
growing
with their
up, though,
influence.
like the 12:30 slot belonging to Conan felt like a little bit more like goofy experimental humor, like Conan O'Brien. Like, and I feel like that time slot they have to put on a more like. Not, I mean, Conan O'Brien was like a little bit edgy for the 90s, right?
Well,
like
Letterman,
like,
Letterman's
so
original
was Letterman. Yeah.
Late Late Show run was particularly edgy because he's just a
I
dick.
feel like Seth.
He's just-
I don't feel like Seth Meyers got it. You
No.
know, I don't know. That's just my take.
because
on it.
he's
I
the
just-
Weekend Update guy. Like
Yeah.
it's just him doing Weekend Update.
Yeah.
But so what that yields now is a show where the majority of the show is him doing, like, you tuned in to see him interview some dumb celebrity, but you're going to listen to how he's stressing out about politics for most of it.
Right.
That's cool. I
Like, he'll
would
do
give
a
it
monologue
give it
about
a shot.
politics and then go into a closer look, which is 30 minutes. Like, I don't know.
That's cool.
Speaking of late night talk show hosts, have any of you guys watched or taken a look at Is It Cake on Netflix?
Oh,
Is it cake?
I
It
saw
is
a
the-
tweet that referenced that, but I had no idea what it was talking about.
It's like shockingly Ed Schrader show-esque. It's like if Ed Schrader's show had like done 2 episodes and then someone during and then someone from Netflix came and was like, you guys want some money? We're not going to give you a ton, but we'll give you some.
I haven't seen it.
that out.
It's one of these things where it's like a brilliant idea. You can see everybody involved is really like, it's like they've got good energy and stuff, but like it's not ready for prime time. There's like kind of interesting. It's fun to watch and go like, oh, wow, that was a weird. When is this guy going to have a joke? Kind of stuff.
What is the premise? Is it a talk show?
No, it's a game show where they bring on people who are really good at making realistic objects out of cake, and then they have to compete to fool judges. Like they,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
Okay.
it's a really great idea that's been executed by people who clearly don't have a lot of experience, and like
Mhm.
it's got a host who's like, you get what he's going for, but it's not really tight at all, and there's like kind of big moments where you're like, it seems like you could have put effort into this and it would have been great, kind of stuff. I feel like
Wow.
that sort of feeling that I remember getting from Ed Schrader, where it was like, oh, come on. We were so close to like a really great, funny moment there. What the hell happened? Like, all right, but on to the next one.
That's what happened.
On to the next one. But it's interesting to see that. It just feels really familiar, and to see that in the Netflix age, like to see people who are learning in real time and sort of like, you know, like somebody who's like kind of dealing with being actually having to be on camera the whole time and like to try to come up with stuff off the top of their heads when that's not really what their strength maybe is. It's interesting. It feels like, oh, we would have had friends doing this if we were born later. This is the show that we would have known people from Baltimore would have graduated into.
Now I want to see the shows. What if Totoshi Show got a Netflix deal?
Oh my God. That would be fun.
It'd be intense. I have no idea how that would work.
I feel like it would have been something where maybe we would have intentionally tried to kamikaze, feeling like we're either going to get canceled for not being accessible enough or canceled because we kamikaze. That we might like, let's go for the first one. Let's go for the best one. Let's get as much as we can out of this before. I mean, which basically is like the ICP strategy. It was like Insane Clown Posse was eventually the subject of a humongous bidding war with some of the most well-funded music labels in the country because they were just impossible to really understand, but clearly onto something.
Controlled demolition.
Yeah, and they're like their massive failure as a major label act enabled them to become immensely rich on their own. I would have advocated for that role for a Netflix Totoshi show. It was like, let's make sure we get fucking like that we're not allowed
a spectacular
to do a
burnout that then feeds into something more esoteric but more successful.
Yeah, any of you remember Wonder Shows?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that show a lot, and you could actually see like the show just like destroy itself as it went along, like in the last few episodes, which are really notable. Like you could just see
They're the
them
best
just, like,
ones.
yeah, it's just like wild, and they're just like they just depart from the whole concept and just go into these really weird directions. But I can almost like sense the burnout, and I know that they had like the dudes that made that show who have made other shows that are pretty cool, but like you could see like such an intense level of detail, like and care that you don't see in like a lot of television shows like put into it up until then. Like it was like a labor of insanity and love, and like.
Don't they have a stop motion animation show now?
Do they? I don't know.
I thought that was I was trying to check in on them one night of like, I wonder what those people are doing now. And I thought that there was like a stop motion animation creepy show that they do. It's PFFR is the name of their crew.
Yeah, I've seen a couple.
Yeah.
They did that. What was it called?
They did Xavier
Xander?
Renegade Angel.
Xavier, and they
like
did
that show.
the Heart She Holler, which is pretty sweet too.
Oh yeah. They did Delocated
I don't know that.
also.
Oh yeah, The Shivering Truth is what I'm thinking of. I haven't seen it, but it's got some really good voice actors. It's got some of the funny British people.
They've got like solid. I would actually check that out. Their stuff is always good.
Yeah, I really want to see this show. I don't know anyone who's seen it.
Shivering
Yeah.
Truth.
The Shivering Truth. Yeah, like look at the voice cast is pretty amazing. It's sort of like that new Julia Childs show that's out. The cast of that show is fucking amazing. BB Newirth's back and Judith
Oh,
Knight.
wow.
I can't wait to see it.
All right.
I love
It's
stories.
an adult swim.
Neon Joe Werewolf Hunter.
Whoa.
I've heard of that.
They have a new show called Teenage Euthanasia that BB Newirth is also in.
Oh, whoa.
And Tim Robinson and Maria Bamford. Actually, that's cool.
Yeah, Maria Bamford deserves a lot.
Oh my God. She has an album called, I think it's called Have You Met My New God or something kind of like that. I've been listening to it recently. Oh my, it's so good. It's so crazy. Download it, check it out wherever you listen to shit. Like
She did a and this is like
it's deep.
pre-COVID. She did a stand-up special just to her parents in their living room. And that was great too. Like, so strange.
It's wild how many comedian women have had vehicles that are exactly Maria Bamford's life story since then. Like Aisling B's show, Roisin Khanati's show. There's more. I think Sarah Pascoe has a show too. That's the same concept of like, woman has a mental breakdown, has to go back and live in her hometown with her crazy family. But Maria,
it is interesting that she lived that, and that's like an archetype of, for better or worse, for a female comedian now. Like,
did you guys watch her show that she made herself when she moved back to? She had a thing like on YouTube that she made with her friends that depicted that whole story. It's like super, super low budget, and it's amazing. It's so good. I forget what it's called, but I'm sure it's on her wiki. But
she had a Netflix show too. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, the Netflix show. I feel like one of the greatest things about her is her impressions of her family, and when another actor does it, it's just not the same.
Right. Yeah.
It's like I want to see her being the mom. I don't want to see somebody else being the mom because she is the perfect her mom.
Right. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, she's better than her actual mom at being her mom.
Great comedian. I'm so glad to have Maria Bamford come on. And she's like just like technical genius as well, just with all the voices and delivery. Like it's just so good.
And yet so vulnerable and seemingly real. Like it really feels like she could fall apart at any moment.
I think out of her cohort of like alt comedians and like the comedians of comedy and stuff, I think she's definitely the one who will have the most like long-term relevance.
Lasting power. Yeah, for sure. Just really, really serious about her craft. You know, like it's like that. There's a lot of practice. There's a lot of writing. She's heard very dense jokes, like much more dense than almost any other comedian I've ever heard. Maybe like there's, you gotta listen to this album. Whatever, I forget what it's called. It's really good.
Cool.
She's in the new Judd Apatow movie, which looks like a big old handful. It's like a movie about making a movie during COVID. It seems like the most in-joke LA possible concept, but it's got like Guz Khan is in it. It's got like a million great actors in it, and yet it looks poisonous.
So I think that this is the last day we should ever talk about Chapter 3.
Certainly.
Oh yeah, we're in for it.
We should
Yeah,
finish
we're
it.
in for
Okay. All right.
I think we crossed out, but then we went.
Did anybody have any more bullet points?
I think we fairly
I
well
like-
handled Chapter 3.
I think I'm prepared to move on to Chapter 4 personally.
Yeah, I had gotten there in my little Kindle, gone past all my notes.
I missed when we crossed over.
We didn't.
My
I don't
first
think we
Chapter 4
officially
is about
crossed
one.
over though, Jordan. I don't think we
Okay.
ever were like, now we're crossing over, but I think we did
Cross over, Jordan.
We did some back and forth,
Yeah, that's true.
so
We never announced
Chapter
it.
3 is closed.
Yeah,
Chapter 3.
No more 3.
No, don't fuck Chapter 3. It's pretty good, but now
I mean,
Yeah.
we could go back to Chapter 3 at any
No.
time.
no,
That's
it's
true.
over.
And
It's
turn
done.
this car around and take us back to Chapter 3.
past is over. It doesn't exist anymore.
I like
Must
in,
look forward.
in Chapter 4. I guess we're probably not going to get too deep into it, but I thought it was very funny how in this chapter Silk like goes to Marble, who's just like gone through a lot, got some new hands, and has like just barely like kind of been able to get back on her feet, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna need you to help me move some stuff and then I need you to take care of everything here because I gotta go.
Also, Rose is dead. Does he even know Rose is dead at this point?
He
figures
No,
it out.
yeah, he figures it out.
He finds it out when he goes into the centipede.
Because he goes into her room and her window is like,
Oh yeah, her glass tells him that she's dead.
He's like, what? She's got one of these? Why didn't she ever tell me? And the window's like, did you ever ask her? He was like, no.
And he's like, well, that's probably why.
That's an interesting moment too. And then he's gonna like snap back at the window, and he's like, I can't yell at a window or whatever.
I love Silk's relationship with Rose. It is a relationship that I feel I've been in. I feel for both of them, and I'm frustrated by how much they don't mesh.
Right, when he like
reasons.
his last sort of contact with her, he's like, okay, show me the last thing she looked at, and it's Chenille on the boat, on the lake, and he's like, okay, what did she say to get this? And it was like, show me what that slut that Silk has foisted upon us is doing.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's like her last words are still just her shitting on Silk.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Really, like the monitor scenes, I imagine like John Leguizamo or something plays the monitor, and whenever the monitor shows up, we're in for some like good comedy.
Yeah.
Great. More monitor.
Yeah.
She just
We love monitors.
She hates Silk for not being Pike and for replacing Pike, and Silk doesn't realize that is happening. I don't know. It's just so tragic.
Yeah.
I think I'm skipping ahead too far, but the pairing her with Musk, I feel like turns out to be incredibly powerful, and like it really calmed my heart a lot about what appeared to be homophobic around Musk. Once this ending of Musk happens where he talks about how Musk never did anything to him, I feel like it really unproblematizes the gayness of Musk. Is that like Silk takes ownership of the fact that like this man was distant from him and he never trusted him, but he never, like Musk never did anything until that. I mean, I guess he hit him in the sternum that one time, but Silk recognizes that that's not really a reason to hate and fear Musk.
Yeah.
Because I like rolling up to this point, I have that thing in my head. Is like, is WOLFE totally out of step with this? Is he just using gay as shorthand for villain because that's what Disney America did? But I feel like once he gets this thing, and linking it to Rose, I think is very important too, in that it's just the otherness of Musk that is the issue here. It's not the kind of otherness. It's just that here is a man who is different from him in a way that he couldn't relate to, and he had the worst reaction to that, and now he recognizes that it was the worst reaction. I feel like WOLFE like surprised me on this read through, kind of like coming through and actually addressing it. In the end, Musk is vindicated.
I think in general this chapter gives us a lot of gives us Blood's origin, like it gives us more context for these sort of villainous figures. That really rounds them out a lot, and it changes how Silk even thinks about them. It's pretty interesting. Marble giving birth thing.
I do think Musk is like sort of a sympathetic character because he's sort of like this. Like he's like a concubine / like henchman or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have like, it's like, oh, he's well kept, but he doesn't like have any real like agency or anything. He kind of like, he can go out and like fuck with people, but he's, he's still just kind of like a servant basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everything that seems villainous about him is stuff that makes him an outsider, and therefore a hypostasis for the supreme god, the outsider.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, that's what Silk says about both Rose and Musk, right? Is that he understands them both as outsiders, and that gives him a greater understanding of who like the outsider might, as much as you can understand about.
And all
such
this
an
is happening when he's discovering that there is an outside, that the world is bigger than he thought, and so these petty things just kind of don't matter because we're about to be expelled from this uterus,
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one, we get the marble giving birth thing too, and this machine person talking about giving birth to a human, which I guess tells us a little bit more about Marble's history too, that she wasn't always the machine that she is now, right? I mean, I'm assuming that
Rose. It's Rose gave birth to Blood.
Is it Rose?
And Marble is now a Rose Marble hybrid,
right?
So it's like Rose saying it, but it,
Okay.
Yeah, it's Marble's. It's Rose's experience.
Right.
So I haven't thought about this before. Maybe I should have. Marble now really wants to have a child. That's a whole thing.
Yeah.
She wants to build a child. Is that Rose?
I mean, you can't separate them really at this point. So,
because
but maybe
Rose
it is
was a
because
mom and
Rose
didn't get to be.
Rose had this like unholy child or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
But now she's given like a new chance to have like a holy child, basically.
She can do it right.
Yeah, that's plausible.
What's her child's name?
Although she has to be conniving to do it.
Which is also kind of Rose-ish. Like Rose-ish was Rose has her conniving side.
And so, do you remember when this was maybe like in the first book? We were talking about this sometime last year, where there's like my edition of the book, which is the first edition, and the later editions have a discrepancy, which is where Silk has a kind of sexy dream about and what I guess is the canonical version.
Oh yeah, one
later
book
is
Mint
Marble.
and one is Rose.
Yeah, and so I think in my edition, it's Rose. And he has this weird, sexy robot dream about Rose, which when I read that, I was like, this is super weird. Like, this is not who I would expect this to be happening for. And then in later editions, it's Marble. But now Rose and Marble are the same sexy robot person.
Yeah, I guess it was that the Oedipal nature of things was too on the nose with Rose, and he had to distance it with Marble a little bit. Maybe.
I mean, it may have just been a slip, but they got caught later on. But I don't know. This is a very interesting thing that's kind of developed now that I don't know is necessarily intentional to have this, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess like Marble and Rose, there was some ambiguity about them, like from the beginning. Like it's not always easy to keep track of who's who until, like Marble's the one that likes Silk and Rose is the one who doesn't. But I don't know. It's very interesting how now they're kind of where they're at in this one body.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too when Silk is talking to Marble at the end there. He says, "Goodbye, Maytera Rose." It's actually kind of confusingly written. Like it almost seems like he's saying goodbye to Maytera Marble.
Well, he is because Marble, like it says Marble raises her head and then she says something that is like what Rose would say, and then Silk is like, okay, well, bye, Rose, and the Marble's like, dude, she's been dead for hours. What are you talking about? Which is a very strange passage. Like it's sort of hard to parse, but I think it is. Yeah, like I mean, Marble has a Rose in her now, but is maybe not necessarily super present with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marble appears to not feel any contradiction whatsoever. She's got like a psychological event happening to her.
They're not like integrated. It's like it's just you're flipping back and forth from one to the other, but the one doesn't really. It's like the possession thing where you're like maybe sort of aware that, but it's like you're kind of being over. It's like an override, and so you're just like kind of flipping back and forth between and I feel like, I mean, maybe in like Short Sun they seem a little more integrated into one person, like down the line, but I think the whole time it's Long Sun, they're kind of like flipping back and forth.
Other memories.
Maybe at the end of Long Sun, they're like when he sees her at the end, maybe that's like they're more integrated at that point. But there's a long period where I feel like it's like he's talking to one, they're just like flipping back and forth.
Processes.
The first thing that I have marked in Chapter 4 is the pictures that are in the paintings in the Cenobi that Silk sees. They're like so vivid, but they're just a very brief part of the chapter. And I thought that there's like so much going on there that there's got to be more, like, I don't know, I wanted help understanding the significance, particularly of Molpe and the pigeon lady. Because
at the beginning of Chapter 4, this is?
Yeah, upstairs he found a hall that was an enlarged version of the landing at the top of the stair, and there's 3 faded pictures. Past Echidna and Tartaros bringing gifts of food, progeny, and prosperity. Earth, sky, underground. That's like that makes sense to me. Scylla spreading her beautiful unseen mantle over a traveler drinking from a pool in the southern desert. That seems to be pretty self-explanatory. Like Scylla's unseen kind of influence over people, which is most literally, I guess, like the people throwing themselves off the cliff into the lake. But the Molpe, we don't have a ton of, I feel like, experience with Molpe. We know she's the god. Crazy people are her domain, right?
And music.
And dancing.
And dancing. Yeah, and so then she is disguised as a young woman of the upper classes, watching a older and much poorer woman feeding pigeons approvingly.
That's Caritas, maybe, right? The
charity.
Yeah, the like people who have received a gift, then having like you downplay receiving the gift, you downplay your excitement, like the meanness of it, like I've got a gift, but you exalt that a gift was given and then pay it back doubly, and that's how charity grows. Mm-hmm. That she's looking upon this well-off person feeding
it's a poor person,
but
she's the well-off.
She's dolled up as the well-off person,
looking at a poor
person feeding something that's even more poor than her, which is a hypostasis of the well-off person. It's the if you help the meanest of my people, you help me thing that Jesus said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's my interpretation of the Molpe bit. I actually have more of a problem with the Pasa Echidna Tartarus thing because they're bringing food, and food is Fea's. I think it's significant that Fea is absent from that if that Pos brings food. If we're looking at Pos brings food, Echidna brings progeny, and Tartarus brings prosperity, which I kind of think maybe it would be I don't know. That's the part that I have mythographic problems with, and then I'd have to dig into to understand more.
Yeah, it shouldn't be food. It should be floaters and fucking animals.
Yeah.
Because we get explicit, somebody talks about Fea in this chapter and about why food is grim, why she's grim. Mm-hmm. Silk talks about that, I guess. Because eating requires killing and there's no way around it.
Yeah. Well, and pigs are her symbol, which is food that we love, but it's a sacred food, and it's also food that will eat you.
And food that tastes like us.
Yeah, the long pork. Book of the Long Pork.
That's the prequel.
Yeah.
This is about cannibalism on Earth.
Yep. The early days of the long sun, when things were hard.
Or
Is that why Galata has to die? That there's just like a primal law broken about cannibalism that Ock is forced to uphold?
I think Ock says that he doesn't. That was not necessarily it.
I mean, that's not what Ox says, but that doesn't necessarily.
Yeah,
mean
but
that
I
it's
don't.
not a
Yeah,
factor.
I feel like the laughing boof is a signal from WOLFE that Ock's not telling himself the truth.
Well, because these people who are down in these pits are now more close to the hyena gods than they are people. I think, like, you can't. What Hunter S. Thompson says, you can't turn your back on a drug. You know, like, no matter that these people have agreed to work with us as people, you can't trust them because they've been debased to less than people.
It's interesting.
What
to
I
compare,
always assumed is the secret thing of why you can't trust a prisoner you just freed.
It's interesting to compare them to the zoanthropes from New Sun, in that they're like, this isn't something that they've done voluntarily, and they're enclosed, but there's still this kind of like primalism that happens to them, that makes them different, and not necessarily like they can't be interacted with like humans.
Yeah.
Well,
Ock knows that he's a frog giving a ride to a scorpion across the river. He knows that if he does it, he's going to get stung.
Right.
I think.
And it's like he's got a pride thing. He doesn't want Chenille to see him as a bad guy, so he comes up with this weird thing of like, well, it's a criminal thing you wouldn't understand. Criminals will kill him because he did like. He's got a weird kind of macho excuse for her. I think just because he's embarrassed.
Well, I think there's weird echoes of this other reason to it, right? Like, because it's all about betrayal. He knows, so like other people will see this guy as having betrayed them for helping me because he's a betrayer, you know, like he has betrayed those people by helping me. So I know that he's capable of betrayal. So he could kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just because he's helping us now, we can't then just like take for granted this guy helps. Like, this guy is a wild animal, and right now that's working for us. And any second now, he could do anything. And we can't blame him for that, but we have to admit that that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's why we shouldn't have spies. You start turning people to spill the beans on the organization that they're in, and now you always have to think, well, I was able to get them to do that. Are they lying to me now? Has somebody turned them back?
Which is the situation that Putin's in right now, right? Because he's the spy that became president.
Mm-hmm.
How could that man trust anyone? A spy can't do. A spy with that much responsibility is never going to be able to trust anyone.
Well, and he also has Parkinson's, so he's swimming in a world soup of memory that doesn't work. Yeah. When the spy's mind goes,
he's still got it more than our guy does. Jesus fucking Christ.
Well, yeah.
Oh no, Josie, no.
What?
Yeah. Oh man, what a wild Shakespearean setting for the stage of the world right now.
Yeah.
It's so fucking wild.
I mean, it's a perfect symbol that both of the people involved in this are ancient, befuddled old men.
It's so amazing.
That is what our culture is right now.
You couldn't write it better. You couldn't write it better.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty good Shakespearean-esque play. A play about not a man who's like mourning for the past, you know, or who's like achieved, you know, the kingdom, but like he watches it slip between his fingers, but a man who becomes the king, who is like thrust upon him, and he doesn't even remotely understand it. You know, like he's just
isn't
there.
Isn't that Zelensky's sitcom?
Yes.
Which one?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. Have you guys watched it?
No, it's on Netflix now apparently.
Holy shit.
It's like if I don't know. It's like if Amy Poehler got elected to some office because of her performance in Parks and Recreation. It's such a weird
and her
thing.
cabinet was all the people who made Parks and Recreation. Like everybody in Zelensky's cabinet worked on that television show.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's super
Yeah.
weird.
I mean,
God.
what other experience points do you want? Really? Like what? Like
writing a TV show that people like is.
I feel like our country, all the cabinet members are just like people who fucking like own hotels. Or
It's
something.
donors.
Yeah.
Like they're
Just big donors.
Yeah, they're not fucking. They don't have any fucking. Yeah, at least those people have like had a job.
And they made a hit show, which a lot of politicians would love to be able to make a hit show, that people like and want more of.
But they're just making flops, baby.
I don't know. Obama has a podcast with Bruce Springsteen that seems to be doing well.
Really?
Yep.
Man, there's nothing
have it together?
lamer.
They have a podcast together.
Well, it's like-
What?
Obama did kind of make a show. That was that was why he was very popular president, because
I mean, it's the horror of Obama.
they
is that he was
made
making a show.
absolutely, like they made a show that people kind of got into, and then there was
Trump too.
Trump totally. The Trump shows.
Trump's show was way better than Obama's show.
Yeah, because Trump's funny.
I mean, no contest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's the greatest comedian of our age.
I think the big difference is just that
I kind of miss him.
the Democrats want to make
The
Democrats want to make the West Wing. They want to make American
Aaron
politics
Sorkin.
the West Wing, and conservatives want to make it into
Shark Tank.
or like Duck Dynasty or whatever.
Shark Tank, dude.
Shark
Yeah.
Tank.
Like
Yeah.
Shark Tank mixed with The Apprentice.
Mhm.
Reality TV is the conservative idiom, and then the Democrats want this like really like
Prestige dramedy.
total
Yeah,
with
but
fully
reality
unrealistic
TV.
politics.
This is
But the
interesting.
kind of, particularly the kind of reality TV where there's like a panel of judges, though.
Right.
Yeah,
This is interesting to me because of my theory that American men hate fiction because they think it's a waste of time.
Oh, cool.
So the really American men need to watch reality TV and pretend it's not fiction.
I also
They need their
you
fiction
guys,
to tell them it's not fiction.
I never thought about how all the like GOP senators, although to be fair, the Democrats do this too, but I never thought about how all the senators are just judges on a reality show.
Yeah.
Like in the hearings, they're
Yeah.
just like, "I'm Simon, you're a bad singer."
And yeah, they're
That's
all
like the Supreme Court shit. That's all that shit is.
Yeah,
That's
when they
all
were
that shit is.
interviewing that woman and Ted Cruz just got in his quip and then didn't listen to the response so that he could check his mentions on Twitter.
yeah, it's all about those
Ted Cruz is
quips.
I
They're
mean,
all
Ted
trying to
Cruz is
have
like
the
a
little
perfect-
memeable moment.
Everybody wants to be Spider-Man.
Ted Cruz is a perfect
quips.
example of someone who thinks he's a judge on a reality show.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get his like little joke in or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all doing that.
I mean, AOC's just trying to get her little joke in. It's just that they're not jokes. They're like, I don't know. I watched.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I think I do agree with you to a degree, but I also think that she usually has like an actual point.
You're not allowed on the table.
Right, so I'm speaking about the
Also-
Amazon, the Amazon union that just happened, where like it didn't look like it was going to happen, so she ditched their pep rally there, and then after
really?
the vote, they that the guy Christian there that unionized them, he had invited her to a pep rally, and she had said she was going to come, and then the day of, she was like, I can't come because of security concerns, but then went to the Met Gala later that week. And then after, against all odds, they got the union to happen. She tweeted in support, and Crystal Ball called her out for that. And then she came at Crystal and was like, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't even the warehouse isn't even in my district. What does it have to do with me? And she's like, all the people who work at it are in your district. Like, they are your constituents.
Also, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I mean, she is annoying in a lot of ways, but I just wanted to say, in the Senate hearing stuff, at least there's usually some content. There's a little daylight there's a little daylight between her and Ted Cruz.
I just feel like it's that gap is narrowing. Maybe I feel bad about that, but
I think
she loves Nancy Pelosi.
I think AOC is like we just watch in real time what being in politics does to a person who gets into it. Oh yeah, intentions.
Absolutely.
Like you just like, yeah. I mean, you're just watching it happen, watching the brainworms kind of like get in there, and then I mean, we watch it in Baltimore politics all the time too. Like on a smaller scale, but like that's just
only you just never even start out that good.
yeah. I mean, it depends on who you are, I guess, but like, yeah. I mean, it's just this quick. It's just a nosedive. It's like every person who has some kind of like good intention getting into politics just immediately gets swallowed by the machine that is like
you get
just getting reelected.
It's funny because when they let, I mean, there's a lot of usage of the word systemic, especially in Baltimore, and when they say it, it means there's older people that you should vote against and voted for the younger people. But the thing that we see and hear when they say systemic is what you're describing is like, you started maybe with some ideals, but now the system has turned you into what the system turns everyone into.
Yeah, you can't take the system apart from the inside.
Yeah, the system does.
You can't dismantle the master's house with his own tools or whatever.
Yeah, it is perfectly calibrated exactly for someone like you. For an AOC or a Brandon Scott or a Ryan Dorsey, and
not only that, but you like legitimize it. Like you are it's actually worse. Like in a way, it's kind of like worse because you are allowing all of that shit to get co-opted in even more.
Scott's like hugely frustrating because like all the problems. I mean, and I know, like objectively, we understand it's not Brandon Scott's fault that everything's getting worse, but it's like everything is getting worse. Like he's not progress. Like you shouldn't look to a figure like that as any kind of progress because no kind of progress is being made except maybe in like messaging materials and communications.
I think he's the like sneak preview of what's going to be a much more widespread phenomenon, I think, of like people who are elected asking to be judged based on their intentions and having no concern over what they've demonstrated that they can do, and then getting the job, and then suddenly being inundated by absolutely boring, mind-numbing, day-to-day, keeping the lights on work that just like depresses them and drives them into this weird little hole.
Or just that they get weirdly like, I feel like Dorsey, they put him on the transportation committee or whatever, and then that just became his whole reason for living, and and most of his way of dealing with any of it is just like towing people and like putting up more traffic cameras or whatever. And it's just, like when he first got into the city council and he would like wear hoodies and like be a dick in meetings and stuff, like he was sort of the like whatever, the enfant terrible of the city council. And then they're like, okay, you just deal with traffic stuff. And he's like, okay.
Yeah. You like bikes? Here.
Yeah. And then that's just like, he just completely like, that's just where he's at now. And he's okay. It's like, that's fine, I guess. It's just not,
Well, and meanwhile, all you ever hear about him is boomers complaining about him.
Yeah.
Like boomers in his district hate him.
and like Bob Cherry, I guess, he's sometimes does pick a fight with Bob Cherry at least, but I don't know.
Scary.
What?
It's like, oh, look what happens when the millennials get in power.
I don't know who
mess
Bob
up
Cherry
traffic
is.
with bike
Bob
lanes.
Cherry's the head of the Fraternal Order of Police in
Yeah.
Baltimore City, at least. So,
Isn't that also the name of the bad guy in 1984?
Bob Cherry? I don't know.
Robert Cherry. I think the guy who interrogates Wilson might be named Robert Cherry.
Man, I haven't read that one in a long time.
Yeah,
It's a
been
book.
while. It is a book.
It's a book.
We can say that.
End of the
about it.
day, it's a book.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
anymore. Now it's the script for reality.
Well, now a major motion picture starring which one is that guy?
Joe Jonas.
No.
That's who I want it to be. Who is it really?
Oh man, John. He's an alien. The guy who gets the alien out of his chest first.
John Hurt?
Yeah, John Hurt plays Big Brother in a movie of 1984.
Right.
FYI, I'm going to wind down in about 5 to 10 minutes.
No,
Word.
that's
I'm
legit.
into that.
Oh my god, it's 1:00.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
The last time I looked at the clock, it was like 11:40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first
And I was
hour
like,
went
wow,
by
I
real
can't
slow.
believe we have a whole hour left, and now it's been like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Time.
That happens. You got sucked into the pack.
Well, we finished chapter 3.
We did.
This ship,
And
yeah.
we substantively talked about chapter 4 too.
Chapter
We got-
4 is much
5?
shorter. Like 3 was
We
a
got
very
into
long chapter, and there was a lot going on in it.
Should we go
Yeah.
like 5?
Yeah, I think that Gene messed up in trying to evenly distribute material between each chapter. If that's the goal.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
Some
3 is
chapters are
long.
just gonna have more than others, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's still,
It's not fair.
it all kind of goes together, even, like he's distributing a lot, but like it makes sense why all this stuff is covered in the same chapter.
Yes. I agree.
Just not equitable.
That's what he's doing.
Should we call it then? So are we gonna try to do I guess we could end the stream and then talk about scheduling.
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
For a
Goodbye,
minute.
internet.
Use Tim's 5 minutes to talk about scheduling.
Johan, maybe he's still watching. I don't know. Have a good one.
Maybe Rose.
Oh yeah, Rose, if you're watching, goodbye.
Oh, yeah. And Rose. All right.
In
cool.
marble.